Something to note before we begin. It doesn't actually matter if you like Kamen or Saber. It's objectively shit. Something else to note before we begin is that it's perfectly okay to like movies or shows that are shit. I myself like the live-action Transformers movies, but those movies are objectively terrible though. When one watches something, you need to keep its quality in mind, and it's not like I want Kamen or Saber to be terrible or Kamen Rider in general to be terrible, but it is.
マジないわ
Honestly, I'm just as shocked as you are, but can we all just admit something? Kamen Rider Saber was never that good to begin with. It's been over 20 episodes since the series has started. There's been 4 fake-out deaths, 1 actual death, and the series is so rushed and unevenly paced, you know nothing about the characters, and there's supposed to be 11 writers slated for this fucking series, so that's why it's perfectly fine for you to see the 6th writer by episode 9. But not every writer is important. Not every writer matters. Hell, not even every writer is here most of the time. Like Kamen Rider Kenzan, for example. He's here until he's not here. They even have him beat up a big baddie like he's some sort of badass or something. But then for like the next couple episodes, he's just kind of there, like nothing's going on. It's just standing there, and then like the plot starts moving, and then he's just nowhere to be found. Like the characters are, what the fuck is he? Do you see him there? I don't fucking see him here. Where the hell did he go? For the purposes of this review, I won't be going over the Swordsman specials in depth, mostly because for one, if I have to go outside the main story to understand the story, it's a bad fucking story in my books, and 2, despite the fact that the specials are supposed to be about the writers, the first one in particular being about Slash and Buster, the 6th and 4th writers respectively, we don't learn anything about them. The writer for Kamen Rider Saber is the same one as it was for Kamen Rider Ghost, Takara Fukuda, and honestly, if I'm allowed to get on my pedestal for a second here, personally, I think that Kamen Rider Ghost gets a pretty bad fucking rap. Yeah, Tenkuchi Takeru isn't the best main character, and yeah, the story's a little bland, but Alan and Makoto are the best fucking writers that we gotten in years, the best 2nd and 3rd, so surely that doesn't mean that Saber deserves as much hate as I'm gonna give it, right? Well, episode 1, in the beginning there was a Swordsman of Flames, begins with
皆さん、ボンヌレクチュール。僕はタッセル。
a character calling himself Tassel, who talks about an extraordinary book that once created an even more extraordinary world, wherein there lies rare creatures, science, as well as human history. The book, however, eventually needed to choose swordsmen to protect it, and although there's 11 swordsmen on screen, technically there should be 1 at this point. Regardless, the swordsmen, however, needed to participate in a grand battle, a battle so epic and grand that not only does it continue to this day, but it was a battle so grand that it caused the great book to split apart into thousands of little baby books as well. Flash forward several thousand years, fucking roll with it, to a place getting attacked by a purple rider, a bunch of general monsters, and a bunch of mooks, as well as a girl getting taken into a book of sorts and a boy failing to save her. Beat-up old man then runs in front of the young boy and tells him that hope lies beyond resolution, and then he stabs the fucking ground, causing an even bigger fucking explosion for some reason. The young boy then awakened sometime later, perfectly fine by the way, not a scratch, not a burn mark, but his memories are erased, however the hell that works. But sometime later, 15 years later to be more precise, the young boy then now runs a bookshop. His name is Kamiyama Toma. He awakens and says that the dream he was having was something that he's had before, clearly implying all of what we just saw was a dream. But keep this shit in mind, we're super not fucking done with this dream shit, neither is the show. But Toma doesn't have enough time to figure out the dream though, as kids start barging the place as they want to read books from the famous bookstore owner. Cut to the Purple Rider from Toma's flashback standing in a room full of Time Jacker rejects from Zio. The Purple Rider then does, something to a painting, allowing him to take a black book from behind it. Then the Purple Rider then gives the black book to the Time Jacker ripoff in leather, then telling him that it's time to create a new world, and he does so earnestly. Cut back to Toma's bookshop, where it shows that he's still really into reading with the kids until he's interrupted by his manager May. When Kamen Rider Saber first came out, a lot of people didn't like May's character at first, even calling her a worse girl from Double, mostly on account of her dialogue this episode mounting to screaming. Personally, though, I don't really mind her as a character, though when she was first introduced, she had the really bad habit of spelling things out for the audience, like how Toma's name is Kamiyama Toma, and then he's a best-selling novelist. Later on, May tries to demand to, like I said tried to, complete a manuscript for tomorrow's deadline, but Toma just says fuck that, I've got things to do, and fucks off. Though as Toma leaves, you can see the secondary writer in the background for no reason. I say no reason as it's never explained what he's doing here, but he also whips out his book for no reason, only so it can pan to the bad guy's book in a neat transition. The Time Checker ripoff on a rooftop nearby summons a monster via the book he was given by the Purple Rider, and after doing so he gives it a white book and tells the monster that it has been chosen to connect the world. Cut over to Toma, who promised to meet up with the kid to give him a birthday present, the present being, as you can no doubt tell, a book, but meanwhile on a rooftop nearby, the monster that was given the white book opens it up and summons a big energy book construct that envelops the city. Inside, Toma, May, and the kid, as well as everybody else, get taken somewhere. Meanwhile, the secondary rider just stands around and watches this happen. Does he not have a sword? The Purple Rider and the Time Checker ripoff stand around too and say how it's great that a new altar book will be made, whatever the hell that is, and then puppet hands start writing on books. Meanwhile, back with Toma, May, and the kid in the big book energy construct, they stand in awe and guffaw of the big beautiful world they're now bestowing upon, and Toma pulls up from his bag a book that you just conveniently didn't see, a pop-up book, and remark how it looks exactly the same. But then Toma stops the kid that came with from trying to run off to find his parents and talks about the plot of the book that he gave the kid and tells him to never give up, just like the main character inside of it, in a scene I actually kinda like. Meanwhile, back with the parents of the child who came with Toma and May, they desperately try to get in the barrier but find that they can't. Meanwhile, the secondary rider all the while is not only just standing there, now he decides to leave instead of going inside. Does he seriously not have a sword? Toma and May then hear sounds of people getting attacked, so they run off to go check. When they arrive at the place, they see people running off, and the place is getting attacked by the monster that summoned them there. Toma then finds leverage with the monster using books to destroy the place and tries to fight it, but gets easily dealt with. Then the monster summons a plant. I'm not quite sure how. He just somehow does this, summons a plant to suck up Toma and May. As Toma and May are getting sucked up by the plant that the monster summoned, Toma grabs onto a lamppost and then gets a flashback to the girl from 15 years ago, then I guess giving him enough strength to kick a fire hydrant out of place, then causing the plant to suck up the water instead of them. And I'm not kidding about Toma kicking a fire hydrant out of place. That actually happens, so that means he should totally be able to fight the monster unhenshin, right? Afterwards, Toma manages to track the monster down and then actually demands that it return the city back to normal. I mean, just wow, okay. Then Toma berates the monster for using books to destroy the world, since they were both made by humans and have the power to save the world instead of destroy it. But then the monster tells Toma to piss off and says that soon that the book he has will be turned into a book that will pave the way for a better envisioned world. Then Toma gets angry and rushes the monster, but to little use. As Toma now writhes in pain after the beatdown he got from the monster, he once again demands the monster return the city back to normal, but the monster just tells Toma to shut the hell up, and then he shoots the building above him, causing debris to fall on him and crush him with rocks. The secondary rider then finally decides to show up and do something, but before he can, this time red energy billows forth from beneath the rocks that fell on Toma, revealing that he's alive, I guess. Then Toma opens up the book that he's had mostly his whole life, causing a red dragon to burst forth, causing a red sword to fall to the ground. The secondary rider was not only in shock that Toma had a Wonder Ride book, but he also says that even if Toma wanted to lift the Seiken, he can't since he's a Homo sapien, whatever the hell that means. But then the secondary rider then starts to speak a verse from the book, of something, that says that when the world unravels, the dragon will awaken from the flaming sword. Whatever the hell that means, since in the next 20 episodes they never talk about it, but Toma successfully manages to pull the sword and transform it into the Seiken Sword Driver. He puts the belt on and then puts the book in, leading to the first henshin of the season. They use cutaway scenes to henshin, like in Ghost, which personally I think is fine, plus they don't use them that often, mostly on account of some of the characters smiling in them, so you can't use them all that often. Though the show still sometimes will do that, as we'll see. The rider designs this season look pretty good too, if it a little over-designed for the two riders we've seen thus far. With the Purple Rider being my personal favorite thus far out of all the two we've seen. But both look good, with all the little colors and engravings and embellishments. It also took me until it was revealed in the show proper that the Purple Rider had a dragon aesthetic just like Saber, though I'm pretty sure that will have nothing to do with the stakes of the show. Ignoring that plot element for right now, after Saber lays into the monster then demands Toma hand over a sword and book. But when he of course says no, the monster simply takes out the white book given to him by the Time Checker ripoff, turns a page, causing the city to flip over similar to a stage selection screen from Egg's-Aid, and now the fight taking place in a desert of sorts. The monster then punches the ground, causing Toma to get flung high up into the air onto the handle of a mountain-sized sword, and from there he fights rocks, and from there he jumps off the sword-sized handle to fight more rocks and also deliver an awkward sword slash on the monster that sends both him and Toma back to the real world somehow. We are going to stop right there, and then we are also going to analyze why the hell any of that happened. After the monster changes the city via a page flip, the city's perfectly fine by the way, the monster punches the ground, causing Toma to get slung up high into the air onto the handle of a mountain-sized sword. After landing on the mountain-sized sword, Toma then fights rocks, I think because those were sent up with him, and then he jumps off to fight more rocks, and then land to deliver an awkward sword slash on the monster that sends him and the monster back to the real world somehow. Why did any of that happen? Regardless of that happening though, Toma then uses a Fire Dragon Rider Punch on the monster, seemingly destroying it, except not really because the monster then reconstructs itself and then grows massive as if it were from a Super Sentai. Toma doesn't worry about it though, since he whips out another rider finisher on the monster in the form of a sword slash that he uses in the style of Drive's Rider Kick from episode 1. Afterwards, Toma and Mei then bask in the beauty of the other world again. Cut back to the Purple Rider and the Time Tracker Rep Ops, who don't make that much of a fuss about the monster being destroyed, since they say that they can rewrite the book's ending, and as well as another one saying that the worlds have been connected. The Purple Rider then says that now that the lost Sword of Flames has appeared again, the other swordsmen will begin to make their moves. Whatever the hell that means. Toma and Mei then return the kid that came with them to the other world back to his parents. They then leave back to Toma's bookshop so he can complete the manuscript for tomorrow's deadline. After he does so, he starts to ponder more about the Wonder Ride world, even pulling out the Brave Dragon Ride book, as well as getting another flashback to the girl that got taken 15 years ago. Remember this shit, it's super important for later. Mei remarks that the photos she took of the other world are gone, but just then, the secondary rider walks to Toma's front door, demanding his sword and book, ending the first episode. What the hell was any of that? Why was the secondary rider following Toma around earlier? He didn't know that Toma had a Wonder Red book until he got saved by his, and nor did he know that Toma would be chosen by his Seiken, Kaien Ken Rekka, which is a bad name considering Rekka means Raging Fire, altogether meaning that his sword's name is called the Flame Sword Raging Flames. That's just fucking silly. But it's not like the Purple Rider is free from this BS either. His sword is called Ankokuken Kurayami. You know, the Sword of Darkness. Just fucking wow, okay. But also, why did they film rocks falling on and killing Toma? Doesn't this show know I have severe rocks falling on and killing main character PTSD? And also, no, I don't want to hear either of this nonsense that either the book saved Toma or this happens in any other Rider series too, because one, unless Brave Dragon can fix broken bones and a smashed face, I don't want to hear it saved him, and two, if this happened in any other Rider series, it would be bad too. Plus, Toma can kick a fire hydrant out of place, but can't beat up a monster unhensioned. Oh, okay. Then there's the bad guys, who are people we learn nothing about, and just sit there and say things about things as if we're supposed to care, like what the hell is an altar book? Why are these hands writing on these things? Why when the monster stopped did one continue? And don't go expecting an explanation to what altar books are, at least not for a little while. All we get from the villains are personality shots, just shots that exist for them to tune the scenery. You know, if we were going to learn anything about the villains, then I feel like we should have had them standing around in monster form and speaking another language instead of them standing around and saying vague nonsense. This episode was not that great, and I'm not going to lie, it's made worse by other subsequent episodes, which kind of sounds hard to believe, but you're going to have to take my word at that. Speaking of next episode, Episode 2, The Swordsman of Water Mounted Upon a Blue Lion, begins with...
皆さんボンヌレクチュール
another narration recap by Tassel. Unlike Woes for Zio, he will pretty much be doing this every episode. Exactly like Woes for Zio, it's annoying regardless. For now, it's harmless though. We pick up where was last left off, with the secondary rider walking through Toma's front door upon a lion. After walking through the front door, he says he read in Japanese culture that it was rude to walk indoors with your shoes still on, but not only are his on too, Toma's and Mei's are still on as well, so the joke doesn't land. I'll say my beef with the bad comedy later. He says his name is Shindo Rintaro, and that he works for something called the Sword of Logos, and that he's not suspicious at all. They obviously don't believe him at first, but he continues to explain that the Sword of Logos is something of a secret guild, and one that has maintained the world's balance for eons, apparently, as he claims. He also says that the Wonder Ride book that Toma has poses great danger, but he doesn't want to tell him anymore for some reason. Toma obviously doesn't give up his sword and book, so Rintaro requests that Toma come with to the Sword of Logos base, with himself using a special passage to get there called the Book Gate. A couple of things to take note of before they go. 1. Rintaro passes over the temptation of sweets for some reason. And 2, the transition to the Sword of Logos base is one of the goofiest transitions in Kamen Rider ever, but it will also not be the last in Saber. Regardless of all of that, however, after the OP, Rintaro introduces Sophia to Toma proper, only after Toma tries to touch a bunch of stuff on the base though. Sophia in turn being the who holds the ever so important duty of She then goes on to explain pretty much nothing the audience didn't already know or couldn't have guessed due to the nature of the show. But what's more, she also explains that the place that they are currently in is not just the northern base, but it's also Why is that, Sho? Well, because Toma is Saber, and this battle has been going on for a long time, and perhaps will go on into the future, and perhaps even beyond that. And then she just leaves. Is that all you're gonna say, though? Even the things we didn't know, we don't even know why they are because she just fucking leaves before we can know. Why the hell is the northern place in the North Pole? Especially if all the places that get attacked are done in Japan. And I'm not kidding about that part either. What's more, there's a pretty big fucking elephant in this room to talk about. Are you guys going to tell Toma that he's the new Saber? Or what that even means? Do you guys even care or know what happened to the previous Saber? Do you think he just fucking died and that it was weird that Rega just disappeared? Well, the characters won't answer, and neither will the show, so I guess they don't care. Moving on, Rintaro further explains that Caliber, the purple rider, was once a swordsman of the guild, but when he betrayed the guild 15 years ago, not only did many swordsmen lose their lives, but many books were taken from the guild as well, with Rintaro looking down at his belt with the assumption that his master or someone precious to him died. We will get back to this. Rintaro further explains that joining the guild isn't something to take lightly. It is a very dangerous thing to get involved in, and you can easily die. Toma then looks down at his belt, which pans into his house, with him alone, still looking at them for some reason. Cut back to the Time Tracker Rip-Ops plus Caliber, with the Time Tracker Rip-Ops in particular excited at the progress of an Ultra book being made, but Caliber just scoffs. That was definitely a scene in this show. Cut back to Toma's bookshop, where Rintaro walks through the door he made to see Toma still looking at his belt. Toma, were you just doing that all night? Like, I know you had different clothes on when we last saw him, but like, that's a formality, right? Regardless, Rintaro came to tell Toma that another part of the city had still been taken. I guess the bad guy summoned another monster off camera or something. You know, it would have been pretty great to see a scene where the bad guy summoned another monster or something, instead of the literal last scene we saw them where they stood around and did nothing. Cut to Toma and Rintaro about to enter the book world, where Rintaro explains that if you have a Seiken, you can enter the book world. First off, the book-shaped door that Toma and Rintaro go through is not a book gate. That is something completely different. And secondly, thus confirming that Rintaro did not have a sword in episode 1. If he did, he would have ran toward the taken part of the city, not away. Thus marking the first major instance of convenience in the show. The writers wanted Saber to be the only rider to fight a monster alone, as well as be the first rider to henshin on screen. But they also wanted the secondary rider on screen like they've done for many riders beforehand. So while the secondary rider is just out and about for some reason, he sees a place get taken but can do nothing about it. He does have his book for some reason. Why? So it can pan to the bad guy's book, of course. Fuck you. Before Toma and Rintaro can actually enter the book world though, it's revealed that Mei followed them on a bike, and after shoving them through the door, Rintaro tells her to go away since this is no place for a Homo sapien again, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. After entering the book world, Toma and Rintaro remark how this place looks worse than before, clearly implying that this is the same place that got taken last episode. Why didn't we see a scene earlier where we see the bad guys summon another monster? Why in episode 1 don't we see them summon more than one monster? It's not a plot hole necessarily, just a gap in the plot. Why in episode 1 don't they see multiple monsters running around instead of just the one that they see? I'll tell you why. For drama. Continuing from there, Rintaro prepares to fight himself, and then monsters show up. To quickly comment, I love Blades' suit, and I just like his jingle. I think all of his jingles for his next forms are pretty cool, but overall I think out of all of his forms, his base form looks the best to me. After henshining, Blades swiftly deals with the monster and some grunts, something that seems to be more and more forgotten as the show goes on. After dealing with the grunts though and landing on a rooftop, Blades says that since it's an ant Megiddo, a horde will follow, and while he is technically correct, what made him think that though? Not like it matters to Blades though, he even says so himself, and even jumps off the roof to deliver a finisher. Cut back to the Time Tracker Rip-Ups though, who react about Blades appearing, but what's weird is though they react about Blades appearing now. Has he never before? Has he never henshined before? Has he never fought before? Well, in 15 episodes and 4 specials, we never find that answer, so. Cut back to Toma getting people out of a building, he then henshins and prepares to fight himself. He was also seemingly inspired by Rintaro's way of attack and fighting style to the point where he named an attack after Rintaro's, after struggling a bit. But then a grasshopper monster shows up and starts grating everybody's ears. He then gloats at the riders about the city being taken, but as he does so, Toma notices the monster next to him is glowing slightly. But before they can give chase, they notice that May fell unconscious due to the monster's grating, so they return back to base. When they do, Toma demands answers from Sophia. She says that the monsters are doing what they're doing so they can recreate the Book of World Creation. Toma tries to go back to fight the monster, but Sophia says that it's already too late. That place has been rewritten by the monster's book, and going back could mean death. So like, is the city savable or not? Also, why does killing the monster save the city at the end of the day? Shouldn't it be just destroying the book that the monster has? Regardless, Sophia says that recklessness and bravery are two different things. Then Toma says a catchphrase, causing a black book to glow red. Sophia saying that it's a book that only Saber can use. It's his bike. They then head out and prepare to fight, leading to the first double rider engine of the show. They then ride their books into battle and prepare to fight, though we quickly cut back to the time tracker robots who see that the monsters have been powered up. Cut back to the riders who really take on a horde of ants. There isn't really a whole lot to say about the fight, against them fighting ants, except for the fact that they do it in Unreal Engine. If you think I'm lying, linked in the description. The grasshopper monster shows up again to grate the rider's ears some more, and before Rentaro can go, Toma stops him because the way that the grasshopper monster is protecting the ant, it's just like the way that the ant and the grasshopper story plays out. The famous story of the ant and the grasshopper. The one that everyone knows about already. The one that the show doesn't need to tell us about. Remember in X8 or Ghost when characters or new things were, or what the reference was for or to, would explain things for or were or to so that the audience would be in the loop?
マイティはお菓子を食べるとこのゲームは爆走バイク破壊妨害なんでもありのレースゲームでそうロボット同士がガチンコで殴り合う SF バトルゲームバンバンシューティングのゲームエリアですよねターゲットの隊長リボルを銃で仕留めるガンシューティングゲームよこの宮本武蔵の刀の唾に誓ったんだ天下無双かかってこい
次の偉人との出会いは
ベートーベンだね
その通り
ああコンサートの開幕だ
蓄音機を発明したのは誰だ
トーマス・エジソンその無限の可能性をバカにするな
Yeah, well, I hated those too. I dragged on the goddamn show too long. Meanwhile, as Blaze beats up the ant monster, he is rewarded with a ride book. Why, though? Well, remember the scene with the villains? No, not this one. No, not this one either. No, still not this one. This one. The one where one of them was saying something about the monsters being powered up. Well, as it turns out, this scene, as well as the scene where Rentaro actually gets the ride book, are the only scenes that explain why the monsters actually have ride books in them. From what we learn later, as well as according to what we know now, they need the rider swords and books so that way they can create the Book of World Creation. I'm only harping on the scene now because I'm just wondering if they should be giving away the rider books so willy-nilly, considering as we learn later, they don't actually have that many, even with the Caliber betrayal. And think about another thing. Why on the final time do we see these guys, and it is only now that they give us info on the monsters? Why is it that in every other one of the scenes with the villains, they stand around and do and say nothing, but no, now it's the last time we see them that matters. Now they're saying something that's important. Whatever. Blades meets up with Toma again and shows him that you can use Wonder Ride books in a different way. As it turns out, the books can learn. Although what that's supposed to mean for the plot in 30 episodes is still unclear. Regardless, Blade uses it for a sword finisher. After using it as such, he then gives it to Toma, who immediately then tries to use it in a form, something that Blades doesn't want him doing for some reason. Not like it matters to Toma, and after using the new form based on Jack and the Beanstalk, he uses it to grow a massive beanstalk, which surprises Rentaro for some reason. So let me get this straight, he knows about the oh-so-famous story about the ant and the grasshopper, but not about the even more famous Jack and the Beanstalk story? Okay. Also, how long has Rentaro been fighting for? Has he never thought to use a Wonder Ride combo before? Has he never seen one before? Whatever, Toma uses his bike book called Diego Speedy to drive up the beanstalk he made to fight the monster, with Diego Speedy's jingle playing in the background. Making me think an actual theme was being played. Unfortunately, no. What is it with Kamen nowadays, feeling so afraid to play its own music? Does anyone remember Revolution or Take It a Try? I love Spinning Wheel, but I also love Laws of Victory, but I can barely fucking hear it. Saber does a rider kick on the monster, earning himself another ride book, based on Peter Pan. Blades then drives around and defeats the last couple of ants that are still around for some reason, and it is only then that the day is saved. Okay, show. Cut back to Caliber and the Time Tracker rip-ups, where Caliber says this defeat only accelerates his plans. Somehow. Cut back to Toma's bookshop, where Toma compliments Rintaro on his swordplay and book usage. Rintaro says that there's a lot to learn about books and swords, and if there's anything Toma wants to know, he can call him Rintaro's son as a bit to be Toma's master, at least just a little bit. But then Mei shows up with some sweets, and then Rintaro can barely control himself. Toma then looks down at the Jack and the Beanstalk ride book, and then gets another flashback to the girl that got taken 15 years ago. Again, remember this scene, it's going to be very important for later. Toma even comments how he remembers the girl from previous dreams. But then, a guy appears from the door that Rintaro made, and he apparently knows who Toma is, leading to episode 3, A Swordsman and a Father, which begins with... Not just another narration recap by Tassel, he also gives lore that makes no sense. He says that during the war for the ancient book that was split apart so long ago, there was an incident that caused the worlds to switch. What do you mean by switch, though? What's even more confusing is the incident they imply to be the incident that caused the Great Book to split apart is also the same incident from episode 1, which for one makes no sense because that incident was 2,000 years ago, but not only that, that's not what switched means. All that happens is that a part of the real world gets taken and put inside of the... No part of the Wonder Ride world has ever been taken and put inside of the real world, so don't say that they were switched. The way this episode describes the event that caused the Great Book to switch as well as the event from episode 1 would be like me saying in World War II MLK established black freedom. Don't say things about things when they aren't true. Back to the plot. We continue where was last left off with a third writer appearing at Toma's bookshop. He says he even knows Toma and says long time no see, although Toma still has no recollection of him. Although when the man starts talking about books, all is revealed. Toma actually remembers who he is, although without a flashback. Huh. Rintaro further says that his name is Fukamiya Kento, and that he is also Kamen Rider Espada. He also asks what Kento is doing here, but he just brushes it off to dive into some eclairs that Mei brought. Toma then decides to dive into some eclairs too, getting Mei upset. And now that Mei has everybody distracted, Kento decides to start acting more emo, even saying that Toma must have forgotten about the girl since he only said that the two of them used to play. Yeesh, there's a lot to unpack about Espada, but I'll wait for certain revelations first. After the OP though, the monster from episode 1 is seen attacking some buildings and Toma and Rintaro show up to attack it. What, you thought we were gonna deal with Espada? No. We've got much better things to worry about and discuss. Meet Kamen Rider Buster, who takes out the monster in one swift finisher of his sword. Also, the monster from episode 1 comes back because, as Rintaro explains, as long as the altar books are complete, the monsters can just keep coming back. What Rintaro actually means to say, I think, I can only assume so based on certain characters' actions later on, is that as long as the bad guys have the monster's books, they can keep coming back beyond death. Though I'm not quite sure why they had Rintaro say the most wrong thing ever, because when I first watched this, I thought Rintaro was talking about the books that the puppet hands were writing on, and those never got complete, so... After the battle, a little kid then runs up to Buster. His kid. Cut back to the Time Tracker rip-ups where we not only get to see them summon a monster, but we also get one of the names of the Time Tracker rip-ups as well. Legiel, the punk-looking one from episode 1. Then cut back to Toma's bookshop, where Buster not only gives his name, but his son's name as well, Ogami Ryo and Sora. Toma then falls in love with the idea of a parent Kamen Rider swordsman and begins to get to writing almost immediately, which creeps out Buster for some reason. Okay. Rintaro then warns Buster of the dangers of bringing your kid to the front lines, but Buster just shrugs it off saying that he's the king of parenting and the strongest swordsman. Hey guys, can you guess what's gonna happen this episode? How about the next 2 episodes? Sometime later though, at the Sword of Logo space, Sophia asks Buster if he's found any information on Caliber. Hard cut back to Toma's bookshop, where Mei's waiting for Toma to get done writing, Toma's writing, and the kids watching trains go by. No show. No, I didn't want to learn lore. Not at all. No thank you. Sora says that he doesn't like the northern base because there's too many books there. Toma of course takes umbrage with the kid not liking books, so he promises to show him just how wonderful books can be. Mei then decides to take Sora out for a walk. Hey guys, can you guess what's about to happen? I don't think you can. Cut to the monster of the episode, who opens a white book not only for millions more to fly out, but a random chunk in a mountain getting taken as well. Millions of books start appearing before people everywhere. Meanwhile, while Sora and Mei are out, Mei decides to get ice cream, and while Sora is waiting alone, a white book appears before him too. He opens it, wondering what could be so interesting about books, but then he gets taken as well, with Mei just barely being unable to come too. Something to quickly note though, has Buster never told anything to Sora about the books? Like, cause he just opens up the book without even registering the fact that it's not like the ones from Tomo's bookshop. Is this supposed to be one of the minor elements from previous Kamen Riders like O's, where sometimes the riders look like monsters? In the entirety of Saber so far, as well as the 15 episodes of this arc, no, you cannot just take the books from Tomo's bookshop and turn them into the toys of the show like in Gaim. Despite the fact that some of the books are known and famous books like Jack and the Beanstalk and Three Little Pigs. Yes, we will be talking about Ex-Swordman when we get to part 2. Meanwhile, back at the Sword of Logos base, Sophia asks Buster, since he's seen the new Saber, what he thinks of him. But Buster just thinks that he's some weirdo as well as some random. Once again, is that all you have to say though? Seriously, do you people know what happened to the previous Saber? But, as Buster says this, a new character walks through the back doors like he's been here the whole time. Buster even gives his name, Daishinji. It cannot be understated how shit of an introduction this is. He's just fucking here, and the way he walks on set and starts sounding nonsense like it's supposed to be true, like how Tomo was there at the Great Battle 15 years ago. How the fuck does he know that show? Rinto confirms that Toma had Brave Dragon on him already. Who the fuck is Toma to these people? And why do they care? Kento further adds that Toma lost his memory, with Sophia saying that that may be the likely reason why he's Saber. What the hell is any of that even supposed to mean? Why the hell do they know that Toma was there 15 years ago? And why the hell do they even care? All of these things these characters are telling me are supposed to mean something, but not only do they mean nothing in the long run, there's an even bigger problem at present that the characters are not talking about. Do seriously none of these characters care about the previous Saber? Because the only questions that are ever asked are in relation to the previous Caliber. Like...
なんであいつが組織を裏切ったか知ってる?
それは誰も知りません。
Which is a very important thing to bring up for these characters. It's very relevant since the previous Caliber was their friends too. The problem is that they're gonna say that the previous Saber was their friend too, and I have a seriously hard time believing that. Back to the plot, Buster starts thinking about Toma some more, and then he comes in to let him know about his kid being kidnapped. So they go back to Toma's bookshop to discuss more about it there for some reason. Then Rinto shows up and, somehow, knows that multiple places were taken at once, so Buster heads off with Saber and Blades following behind. Once over, Buster goes off on his own, not trusting Saber since he's a novelist. Which is one of the dumbest things ever in this show. The lizard monster then shows up to attack Toma and Rintaro, but when they call it a lizard monster, it seemingly gets angry. The two riders then prepare to fight. Meanwhile, back at the Sword of Logos base, Sophia and Kento are talking about Saber. Kento says it may be better off if Toma doesn't remember anything, but Sophia says that Kento shouldn't put all the blame on his shoulders, even if the Swordsman of Darkness is his, and then it cuts to Caliber, who says that the swordsmen appearing one after another will pave the way for him to reach the true book, and that the day that he'll reach Avalon is soon coming. To literally no one else in the room. Okay. Cut back to Blades and Saber, who are struggling against the lizard monster due to its gross and slimy body, which makes no sense because when things are slimy and wet it should be easier to cut. Regardless, Toma evens the playing field with the new ride book he got, Peter Fantasista, and while he uses a finisher and it does damage, he backfires a bit. Blades then takes and uses Peter Fantasista for himself, telling Toma that it suits his way of battle best, also saying that he'll show Toma the power of matching books, you know, since he is a blue rider and all. Blades then uses the finisher on the monster, complete with teleportation. Huh. Saber then puts in Jakun to not be outstaged by Blades and then grows a massive beanstalk launching the enemy in the air, but then Buster shows up, who henshins and quickly defeats the monster in one swift finisher of his sword again. But the day is still not saved. Leading into episode 4, the book was opened. That is the reason. Which begins with nothing more than a basic recap by Tassel. After it though, we open up in the Sword of Logos base, with Buster not taking the situation well. Rinto tries to calm Buster down, but while he doesn't snap, he says that children are his treasures and that Sora is his everything, like he's about to snap. Toma then promises Buster to find Sora for him, which annoys Buster something fierce. He then gets fairly angry with Toma, demanding to know what kind of promise he made his son. Rintaro then tries to break up the two's fight, but gets knocked aside in what I can only consider an absolutely pathetic attempt at comedy. Kamen Rider Saber is not funny. The show isn't smart. In fact, the show is actually at its dumbest when it thinks it's being smart. More on that point later though. Back to the comedy, from Rintaro saying that he's not suspicious at all, to him walking indoors on a lion because he heard that it was rude to walk indoors with your shoes still on, to here, with him getting tossed aside, complete with a comedy. It is precisely scenes like this that make people think that Saber doesn't have a consistent tone. Buster's having a panic attack about Sora, multiple places are getting taken by the monsters, but no. Rintaro's head go bonk. Ha! Toma promises to keep his promise with Sora, and then leaves, with Rintaro close behind. Espada then goes over to Buster, but then it cuts to the Time Tracker ripoffs, who discuss the failure of the lizard monster. It regenerates, thus making this another completely pointless scene with the villains. After the OP, Rintaro and Mei wonder what Toma is doing. Apparently, he's looking for a biology book. Cut back to the Sword of Logo space, where Espada gives a yellow book to Buster. It's a bit of a metaphor. He's willingly weakening himself since, he's the yellow and gold rider, so that way he can have stronger faith in Toma. Cut back to Toma, who finds a biology book and finds out that the lizard monster is actually a salamander. A lizard. Anyway, he finds out through another book that the lizard monster is also based on the story of the Salamander King, as well as through another book that it's also based on the story of the man-eating salamander. Good job, show! You actually managed to tell the story of one of the books in the show. Now do that for all of the books! Toma and Rinto begin to make preparations to go over to the Wonder Ride world, but then Buster shows up, who demands to know what kind of promise Toma made his son. Toma tells him that he promised to tell Sora just how good books can be, surprising Buster. Rintaro then asks why Toma is so enamored with promises, and causing him to get a flashback to the girl that got taken 15 years ago again. And while Toma says he doesn't quite know, he does say that while he has the power to save people, he will, no matter what, causing Buster to chuckle a bit. Buster then prepares to head off with Toma and Rintaro close behind. Mei then prepares to head off too, but trips, revealing that she had a Wonder Ride book too. Cut over to Caliber, who walks into a warehouse and opens up a sealed book, summoning a monster called Disaster. Disaster then tracks down the riders via the smell of a red book he has and stops the riders from entering the Wonder Ride world. Also, a reason has never technically been given as to why he has this Wonder Ride book, but people like to theorize and think that it's because Caliber gave it to him, but more on why or how as to later though. Toma actually prepares to fight himself, even giving Buster Jack-kun, but Buster decides to take matters into his own hands, even giving Toma the yellow book that Espada gave him. Though as Toma and Rintaro enter the book world, it's revealed that Caliber is following them. Cut over to Mei, who opened her book and entered the book world to meet up with Sora. It's revealed that she brought fireworks along with so that she could alert the others when they arrive. The riders conveniently do, so they head off to go save them. Cut back to Buster, who's having a rather intense fight with Disaster, though in the middle the two talk as though they've fought before, as well as how getting old sucks, but the two quickly get back into it. Cut back to Sora and Mei, where Sora says the books suck. But then Toma shows up to tell him that books are okay if they're used okay. Then Rinto shows up to use his Lion Senki book to free all the trapped prisoners. But then the lizard monster shows up, none too happy that the riders did that, so they quickly henshin into action, complete with them opening and closing their books awkwardly. It's like in Gaim if the riders open their lock seeds and then close them, only to open them again and then put them in the belt. It's just awkward and weird is all. Anyway, they quickly defeat the monster, only for it to awkwardly survive by throwing a piece of itself away before getting to self-destroyed. Ew. Cut back to Buster, who after putting in Jack-kun, both of them do a finisher on each other, leading to a draw, but Buster somehow manages to swipe the red ride book that Disaster had, leading to at least some kind of victory. Cut back to Toma and Rinto, who are now struggling against the lizard monster because apparently when it regenerates it gets stronger. Yeah, didn't you know, was part saying? Anyway, Toma steals Peter Fantasista from Blades and then goes volume 3. Sora then asks what Peter Pan is, but they don't really have a whole lot of time to explain it. Toma then uses a finisher on the monster, even summoning a famous wrestling star to help him finish this story. Sora is impressed. The monster just can't regenerate now, just because fuck you, that's why. Saber is shit. Mei gets to go home, Sora gets to go home, and the day is saved. Until Toma nearly passes out due to book fatigue. Apparently using 3 books at a time is a big deal. And then Caliber shows up. Okay. Toma clearly remembers who he is from his dreams, But then it also cuts to Sophia, who I think can just sense him for some reason. More on that later, if she can. Cut back to the riders who have now henchmen to fight Caliber, but from this quick scuffle, he makes it clear just how much stronger and better of a swordsman he is to them. He's about to do a finisher on the riders, but then it gets blocked by Espada, the Gold Rider, and apparently a strong display of power since he actually managed to block Caliber's finisher, but then the episode ends with Caliber, or the swordsman's, leaving for some reason. Leading into episode 5, My Friend, the Swordsman of Thunder, which begins with another narration recap by Tassel, who once again talks about the worlds being switched, which still makes no sense, but he also talks about how the Wheel of Fate has begun turning for the riders, and to a degree, I would actually agree with this sentiment. It really feels like they want the plot to start moving this episode. The problem is that it's also the start of the bad, and by episode 6... well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The episode itself opens up in Toma's bookshop, with Toma himself wondering who all the key players are in the game, as well as what all these things have to do with him. This will be something that'll be done a few times in the show, Toma questioning stuff. It then cuts to yesterday at the Sword of Logo space, with all of the writers talking about all that's happened so far, like how Caliber tried to steal Toma's sword and books. Sophia then says that protecting the world is the writer's top priority. Blades then prepares to head off, which leads to one of the dumbest lines in the show. Rintaro says he'll look for bubbles. They appear whenever abnormalities are nearby. 1. Why do they not have a sensor for monsters in the base? How have they known that monster attacks have happened before without one? Is that what Rintaro was doing back in episode 1? Looking for bubbles? 2. The reason why this line makes no sense because remember back in episode 3 when Rintaro was telling Buster that his son was taken as well as multiple places in the city getting taken as well? How the hell did he know that if they don't have a sensor in the base? Why is he manually looking for them now when he can just look on the sensor and find them that way? This, my friends, is what a plot hole looks like. Buster says he'll go after Caliber, and Kento's to stay on duty just in case of a monster attack. Buster then tries to lighten the mood for everyone, but gets whacked in the head by Daishinji walking out from behind a big blue door, book thing. In the remaining 10 episodes in the arc, plus 4 specials and short movie, and with the remaining 30 episodes that are out in the show so far, where this door goes to and fro is never explained, especially with what we learn in episode 8. Daishinji then takes Toma's sword and books and says how reckless he's been for using 3 books. Apparently he does maintenance on the swords, keeping them up to date for the riders to use. What's more, he has some weird gripe with looking people in the eyes for some reason. Not like it matters, but he also says that when he scans Toma's Rekka, that he's barely using half of its power. Not like that really matters either. But he also asks for Toma's books. Toma then tries to strike up a conversation with Kento, but Kento simply says he'll defeat him out of context. Whoever the hell that could be. Cut back to the present where, as if you remember, all of what we just saw was a flashback to yesterday so far, where Tenma's worried about Kento. After the OP though, we open up in the Sword of Logo space with Buster and Espada talking. Espada specifically upset about his dad being Caliber, a fact that they just casually dropped to the audience as if it was a common fact until now. Like, I get that Sophia and Espada were talking in episode 3 about the two's close relationship or supposed relationship, but to commonly drop this fact as though it was a common fact raises the very important question, why even bother with who Caliber is if it doesn't even matter who he is in the end? What's more, I haven't mentioned it either, but Caliber has a voice modifier. For no reason. Like I said earlier, I have no idea why he has one. You see, characters like Knight Rogue have a voice modifier so that way other characters in the universe don't figure out who he is. Caliber has no reason to have a voice modifier. It's just dumb. Back to the plot, Espada is bummed that since his dad is Caliber, it caused a bunch of riders to die as well as a bunch of books to get stolen from the base. Yeah, all fucking 4 of them. Buster says that since Caliber was Espada's father, as well as his friend, that it's the entire guild's responsibility, not just Espada's alone. Cut over to the time tracker ripoff in a park somewhere who opens up a book and summons a piranha monster. Then cut to Toma's bookshop where Rintaro comes by to drop off Rekka for Toma and then leaves with Mei to go find Bubbles. Toma then tries to ask something about Kento to Rintaro, but he leaves before he can get the chance to, so he makes plans to go see him himself. Then cut to Kento on a rooftop somewhere. I say somewhere because characters come to this place multiple times throughout the show for multiple reasons, but where this place is never fucking explained. It's not Toma's outside of his house because we've seen that in episode 1. We know it's not the roof of Toma's house because every opening it pans over it and it looks nothing like this, and it's not the northern base because, well, North Pole? So where the fuck is this place? Back to the plot, Kento's on the emo rooftop thinking about his dad while fingering his hair, but he quickly gets out of the daze to start reading with Toma in a scene that I actually kind of like. It's just a shame that scenes like this don't happen more often, as it's literally the last time the two do it together. Read together. Wink, wink. Anyway, cut to the piranha monster that the time jacker summoned taking a boat from off the coast within eyesight of the riders on the roof. They head over, but when they do, the monster calls them prey for some reason. Not like it matters to Espada, who quickly henshins to face the monster. To quickly comment on the Espada suit, I really like it. I also love his swordplay that he uses in this form, but just a shame that I don't like his jingle, though it is made moot by future forms he gets later. Espada then shows how much of a badass he is by effortlessly dealing with the piranha monster with this excellent swordplay. Meanwhile, Toma then sees the boat off the coast get attacked by the more piranha monsters and then henshins to fight. And then Caliber shows up. The two get into a scuffle, but the energies of their belts erupt and cause both of them to get blown away as a result. Espada then sees Caliber and flips his shit, even rushing him down and being a dick to Toma by pushing him out of the way. Yeah, so much for your friend, dickbag. The two clash, with Espada demanding to know why his father would do what he did, like betray the guild and kill all those riders. Toma then goes volume 3 and fights the piranha monster solo, leading in with a finisher and seemingly destroying it. Meanwhile, with Espada and Caliber, the two do a finisher on each other, with Espada almost getting hurt, but gets saved by Buster, who comes right the fuck out of nowhere and saves him, with Caliber teleporting away. After the battle, Buster chastises Espada for the way he acted, but he just walks away. Cut to Caliber walking down an alleyway, where he's stopped by the time jacker ripoff and asks why he's so interested in Saber. Caliber simply turns around and says Avalon. Cut to Rentaro and Mei, who find a gambling stand. Okay. Cut over to the time jacker ripoffs, who are having a dick measuring contest. What an important scene that adds so much to the plot. I'm glad these are in the show. Cut over to Kento on his emo rooftop thinking about his dad while fingering his hair again. Buster shows up to try and cheer him up in what is the only scene of him acting like a veteran rider, and it comes off more like him cheering up his kid. I'll explain why this is dumb at the end. Buster asks Espada why he hasn't told Toma anything, but Espada simply says Toma's lost a lot of memories and he doesn't want him to lose anything more than the memories he already has. Buster then asks Espada if he should be treating Toma like he's so weak, but Espada doesn't really answer. Buster then tells Espada that he should be more willing to ask for help like his father never did, and then leaves. Before he leaves though, he runs into Toma and gives him the red book that he swiped from Disaster. Buster then asks Toma not to ask Kento about 15 years ago, saying that everyone has their own problems and worries to, well, worry about. Toma then tries to give Buster back the yellow book that he gave him, but Buster says that it isn't his, it's Kento's. And then Kento shows up. The two make their way back to Toma's bookshop from wherever the hell they were, and Toma gives the yellow book back to Espada. The two then talk about Toma's pop-up book, leading to a flashback of sorts, or rather, them playing a clip of the girl that got taken 15 years ago, more on that later. Toma then says that for him, it feels like time stopped 15 years ago, which not only makes no sense, but he also says that he wants to figure out why. Kanto then prepares for Toma to ask him about 15 years ago, even himself getting a flashback of his father 15 years ago, revealing that he was there too. As Toma prepares to ask Kento about 15 years ago, his hand skids past the red book that he got for Buster, and he decides not to instead. They both then remember something very important about the piranha monster and make plans to attack it, and from there it cuts to one of the dumbest scenes in Kamen Rider. Cut to Rentaro and Mei, who are alone in an alleyway of sorts. What are they doing here? How did they get here from the last scene that they were in? Well, we don't really have any time to go into that. It turns out that they're still looking for bubbles using an app called Inster or something, and Mei wants to use this to join the Sword of Logos. And then Disaster shows up. They both run away. If you're wondering why Sophia or anyone hasn't told them about the other attacks by the monsters, well, we don't have time to go into that. Wanna run that by me again, show? What do you mean you found the piranha monsters off camera? What do you mean you just know where they are? Yeah, you worked real hard for this one, show, didn't ya? Worked real fucking hard. Now let's bask in the glory of this fish fry. Fuck you, Saber. Also, there's another piranha monster here now, because this is actually the brother of the one that got destroyed earlier. So it's perfectly fine. Anyway, after the riders defeat the army of piranha monsters and not the big one, they get off their bikes just so Toma can try out the new book that he got from Buster, Storming Eagle. He puts it in, and the form looks just okay. It gives him wings at least, so it's pretty cool. He quickly does a finisher on the monster, which destroys another good chunk of the fish monsters. So what the hell did they destroy earlier then? Anyway, Espada uses a finisher on the main fish monster, quickly destroying it. With that being the absolute last fish monster, and the day totally being saved this time. Anyway, after the battle regardless, Espada tells Toma that after he remembers everything, there's something that the two need to talk about. Then cut to Tassel, surprisingly, who remarks how it's wonderful that Toma and Espada are becoming friends. But then he quickly remarks of another situation which seems to have gotten worse. Cut over to Rintaro and Mei, where Disaster is telling them the bad guy's plans for no reason. Not like it matters, as it's nothing the writers couldn't have easily guessed, but regardless, it's to take over the world using the writer's swords and books. But then one of the Time Jacker ripoffs shows up, none too happy that Disaster is spilling the beans to the writers, transforming himself into one of the monsters from Toma's flashback. Disaster playfully acts surprised and gives his name, Zuos. But then the two get into a scuffle, with Rintaro and Mei as casualty for a little bit. But the episode ends with Rintaro apparently having history with Zuos, leading into episode 6, Like the Winds, They Meet, which begins with pretty much a basic recap by Tassel, who also talks about another writer coming soon. The episode opens in Toma's bookshop with Toma wondering more about the swords, books, monsters, and stuff, so he goes back to the Sword of Logos space to ask his good friend Kento all about it. But before he actually can though, coming from the opposite end of the room comes Ren, no last name given, also known as Kamen Rider Kenzan, who is training in something called the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, or Liberation as it's called for the show. Regardless, when Ren comes out of Liberation, he immediately picks a fight with Toma, even calling him a scrub. But then Sophia shows up to let them all know that Zuo showed up and how Blades is currently tracking him down. So they send Espada to help track him down as well, although we never see that for the rest of the episode, so where Kento goes here is rather unclear. Anyway, Kenzan wants to go too, but can't because Daishinji, who was totally here the whole time, you just completely fucking missed him, is too busy looking at Kenzan's sword, the twin sword of Zephyr's Hayate, and demands that it get some rest. Toma in the meantime asks Sophia if he can read some books around the base, with Sophia of course saying yes, but if he has any more questions he can ask Slash. I'm dropping the pretense now, it's Daishinji. Anyway, and then Sophia just leaves. Thank you for not telling me anything, you useless K. Anyway, back to the Time Jacker ripoffs plus Disaster, where the nameless Time Jacker ripoff tells Disaster to go work with Legiel, as well as help Zuos, since apparently Zuos has been on edge recently, or something, and Legiel finds that interesting. Anyway, the nameless Time Jacker ripoff also discusses with Caliber and how to get to Avalon. Wait, how come Caliber didn't know how to get to Avalon sooner? How come he didn't ask sooner? Whatever. Cut back to Toma's bookshop, where Toma himself is reading from some books he got from the Sword of Logos space, with one reading a passage that says when the world begins to melt, a bright light and two dragons will begin to meet, revealing a path to a chasm in the world's mist. And then Ren shows up and begins to pick on Toma some more. And then Daishinji shows up to bring Toma back as Rekka. Daishinji then says that all Wonder-Eyed books come from the Great Book, so are therefore all-powerful in their own right, especially when misused. Toma then asks about Ultra-Eyed books, and while we don't necessarily get an answer, he does say that they are used to create new worlds, however the hell that's actually supposed to be done. Daishinji also says that they aren't made the correct way, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, but he also says that they're powerful, in a way where, yeah, it is a joke, but the Ultra-Eyed books themselves are not. Toma then snaps a bit, asking Kenzan what his deal is about being strong, even saying that books have knowledge that can be just as important as being strong, but Kenzan doesn't get it. Kenzan says that justice is strength, and strength is justice. This is not a character you've presented to me, show. This is a concept, and honestly, I feel a little insulted. No one thinks like this. Toma then tells Kenzan that heart is far more important than strength, so the two bet each other on a ride book to see whose justice is more correct. Daishinji says that both are important and quickly tries to leave, but stays at the behest of the two riders. Before the battle can actually begin, however, Toma gets a call from Espada, distracting Kenzan and earning Toma the win. Toma in turn got a call from Espada to let him know of a monster attack, so he quickly heads out, complete with a close-up of Toma's eye for no reason. Kenzan of course can't come because Daishinji is still looking at his sword. But then Disaster shows up with an unnecessarily cool transition and... wait a minute, I thought he was supposed to be helping out Zuo since he was feeling really agitated. Whatever. Toma goes volume 3, even using the new green book he got from Kenzan, and he actually manages to successfully henshin against Disaster, but then it cuts. And now Espada is fighting Disaster, and Toma's fighting the fish monster. Yeah, I don't really get it either. Toma himself decides to go along with the madness and decides to use a finisher on the fish monster, destroying it, except not for real. You know, show, if you have an army of immortal monsters as well as multiple ones that can come from one book, then why don't you just swarm the city with multiple immortal monsters all the time? Whatever, after Toma destroys the fish monster, the nameless timejacker shows up and Toma tries to help him since he doesn't know who he is, but gets fucked over instead, leading to one of the dumbest scenes in Saber. The nameless timejacker somehow, I'm not quite sure how, just somehow steals Toma's powers away. Wanna run that Buy Me Again show? How long has he had these powers for? Will he ever use these powers again in the show? Well, to answer that second question, no. And the answer to the first question, the answer is of course. After Toma loses his powers, he gets knocked away by the nameless timejacker ripoff and loses the red book he got Storming Eagle to Disaster, who I thought was fighting Espada. Whatever. But then the two timejacker ripoffs just leave instead of attacking the now defenseless riders. The two riders then go back to the base so that way they can get Toma's sword analyzed. Through Daishinji's analysis, it's revealed that he has a seal in his sword, and Ren picks on Toma some more. Daishinji then reveals that Toma may need a trip to something called Avalon in order to break the seal. Somehow. Daishinji also says that Avalon is a lost place, one with immense power, and if Toma can harness its power, not just part of it, but all of it, then he may be able to get his powers fixed. How do they know this will even work? No one's apparently ever been to Avalon before, so have people gotten their swords sealed before? How do they get their swords unsealed without ever going to Avalon? Daishinji further explains that no swordsman can ever venture there. Well, it's a good thing Toma doesn't have his Kamen Rider power, so he's not a Kamen Rider now if you mean Kamen Rider instead of swordsman, right? Toma then gives Kenzan back his green book, but only if he takes his place in fighting the monster for the episode. The two then treat this like a rematch of earlier's fight. Can Toma get to Avalon before Ren saves the day? Espada and Kenzan then head out, with Toma making preparations to find a way to get to Avalon, with Daishinji wanting to tell him something, but then it cuts to Zuos opening a book structure somewhere. And then Rentaro shows up. Okay. The two then fight. It's here that we actually get another cutaway scene where Rentaro is smiling in it. Not like it matters, it's just worth mentioning. During the fight, it's revealed that Zuos killed the previous Blades, who in turn was Rentaro's master and father figure. Oh, it's a little early to be talking about this, don't you think? Especially with as little build-up as there's been, since the only time they ever talked about this was in episode 2 when Rentaro said that many swordsmen lost their lives when Calor betrayed the guild. I mean, unless you want to count last episode when he said his name, but Rentaro didn't know Zuos killed his master until just now. So, anyway, after Blades learns this information, he begins to laugh creepily. Cut over to Kenzan and Espada, who begin to fight more fish. For fuck's sake, show, how the hell do you kill these things? Look, I get it, this show's probably very expensive for some whatever reason, but that doesn't mean you need to keep bringing back monsters with nothing but broken lines to explain your bullshit. Kenzan prepares to henshin into battle, complete with no cutaway henshin for him. Huh. Not like it matters for now, as we'll see. Also, to talk about the Kenzan suit, I don't really like it. It has the 01 problem of looking too much like a tracksuit, and as a result looks naked. Just my opinion, though. Espada prepares to fight too, going Volume 2. Cut back to Daishinji and Toma back at base, where Daishinji presses on some books to somehow make some bookshelves come from up above so Toma can read them. You know, Daishinji, you could've just got a ladder. Also, don't remember this whole book pressing in thing. It'll never happen again in the show. Toma asks what Avalon is, and Daishinji says that it's a place of uncontrollable power. Power so great that they needed to seal it away. You know, I feel like this is just going to come back around again later, so I'm going to ask now. Why? Also, that's definitely not true, since as we find out later, there's a person in there, so unless that uncontrollable power was meant to be literal, in which case, technically Daishinji wasn't actually wrong. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. From there, we cut to the nameless timejacker ripoff plus Caliber talking about how to get to Avalon through something called the Rift of Time, whatever the hell that is, but also, why is Caliber asking about how to get to Avalon now? Shouldn't he have already known, or at the very least have asked sooner? Anyway, we cut back to Toma, who's now read through several bookshelves worth of books and can't find any information. Toma then remembers something that Daishinji said earlier about how no swordsman can get to Avalon, so he then asks if there's forbidden books at the base. However the hell he came to that conclusion. Daishinji then awkwardly looks at the area that Sophia usually stands at, leading to a chase, where Toma then somehow, tricks Daishinji into pressing books in the right way, summoning a black book from up above, leading to another chase, where Toma of course gets the book. As Toma reads from the book, he remembers information that he got from another book which wasn't sealed for some reason. Wait a minute, why is the information to get to Avalon told in multiple books? Why is the way to get to Avalon told in half of a forbidden book? Whatever. Cut back to Blades, who's getting his ass beat by Zuos, and Mei tries to call for help, but Blades demand that she doesn't, saying he'll do this himself. Cut back to Espada and Kenzan, who are still fighting Fish, and then Disaster shows up. Apparently Disaster is here for Kenzan's sword and books. As the two fight, the area around them changes into a cityscape, and Kenzan finally goes on the ropes. That is until Kenzan uses his second book, and goes Volume 2, gaining the upper hand on Disaster for a little bit. Cut to Espada, who uses a finisher on the monster, seemingly destroying the fish monster. Cut over to the nameless time tracker Ripoff, who unseals a black book from some chains, and from there cut to Toma, who, through the help of Daishinji sneezing, figures out how to get to Avalon. Cut back over to Kenzan, who uses a finisher on Disaster and even destroys him, except not really. Cut back over to the nameless time tracker Ripoff, who gives the unsealed book to Caliber and asks him what his goal is, but then it cuts back to Blades, getting murdered by Zuos and borderline mocked by him by letting him live. Blades then brutally dehensions and screams out in anger in front of Mei. Cut back over to Toma, who's getting praised by Daishinji. Toma then asks if Daishinji is Slash, and then Daishinji says that the only one who calls him that anymore is Sophia. Ending the episode. Except not there. After the credits, a first for Saber, we open up in the Sword of Logos base with Blades brutally hurt from his battle with Zuos, walking over to a drawer, taking a ride book out, and then walking into Liberation for training, not answering anyone's questions, ending the episode for real, and leading into Episode 7, The King's Blade, Lies in Avalon, which begins again with another narration by Tassel, who's flying for some reason. Okay. The episode opens up in the Sword of Logos space with a minor retcon of what happened at the end of last episode, with Rintaro still taking the two ride books out of the drawer, but only this time stopping to listen to what Espada has to ask but not answering, still going off to train. It's here that we also learn what Liberation exactly is, and it's here that they explain that it's basically the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z, as time passes differently in the real world compared to in there, but due to the time difference it puts an enormous strain on the body, and if you're in there too long you could die. Although one has to doubt the validity of that statement considering Kenzan was in there for 5 days, considering episodes 1 through 5 all have days begin and end in them. And that's not taking into consideration the episodes that said that multiple days have happened, as well as him training before the events of the show. But whatever, Toma promises Sophia that he'll find a way to get his sword fixed, leading to Sophia asking if he's found a way to get to Avalon, leading to Toma explaining. From some books, he reads that when the world begins to unravel, a bright light and two dragons will come together, revealing a path to a chasm in the world's midst. The king slumbers in the rift of time. From another book, he reads that when the 13 stories are connected by sword, the world's rift shall be reached. Toma then deduces that since all of these things were talking about the same thing, and that also since all of these things came from different books, then that must mean that Avalon lies in a different dimension. Of course. So that just means that Caliber should be able to cut right to it, right? That's what they call a plot hole, kids. Also, you would think with the whole 13 stories connected by sword thing that they'd need to go on some sort of quest to get missing ride books, what with the whole Caliber betrayal and all, but nope, as we see later, they just have all the books. Toma then gives some lore on King of Arthur, like / how and when he died, he was taken to a place called Avalon. Sophia then says that no one has ever been able to get to Avalon before, which is actually not true, and she should technically know that. Whatever, they all realize since that they were able to figure out how to get to Avalon quickly, then that must mean that Caliber is hot on their trail, so they then make preparations to get the ritual underway quickly. Cut to Caliber getting to Avalon his own way, complete with him speaking backwards for no reason. Cut to the Sword of Logos space where Espada is now henshin due to the sacred poses to get to Avalon, and it's like I said earlier, they have all the ride books already, as ride books from all over the room, even some coming from bookshelves as if they were shoved into them instead of drawers like what we've seen with Tenku no Pegasus, or even from the back room or something, start coming all from over the room in front of Espada. What do these books have to do with getting to Avalon though? What about the black books the Caliber has to use to get to Avalon? Well, I'd like to know that too. What about the sacred poses that the riders have to use as well? Because when we see Caliber, all he's doing is just having his sword raised in the air. Okay, Sho. You know, Sho, at the end of the day, if all you were going to do was just say they go to another book world via book magic, then why waste my time building up this nonsense with world unravelings and dragons and lights and all that? It just makes me feel like my time is being fucking wasted. All of the riders make their way to go to Avalon, which also leads to the second goofiest transition in all of Saber. Cut over to the Time Jacker ripoffs who make plans to accelerate their invasion of the world, since Caliber has most of the Rider distracted, and even though Zuos elects to go out first, the nameless Time Jacker elects Legio to go out instead. I'm not quite sure why. The nameless one simply says, "It's time to see your true convictions." As if he had conviction issues or something. Or as if he couldn't be trusted. You know, maybe in one of the many scenes these guys were on screen together, literally any of them, that could have been relevant. Hell, what about Zuos? He let Rintaro live last episode. Is anybody going to talk about that? No? Anyway, Legiel summons a Medusa monster and smirks. Cut over to Mei entering Toma's bookshop, who sees a manuscript on Toma's desk and begins to call her manager to tell her about it, but then she remembers how Rintaro was acting weird both during and after the fight with Zuos and thinks if he's okay. Cut to Rintaro in Liberation training, still hurt from his battle with Zuos, but continuing. We even get a flashback of sorts of Rintaro's master before he died and while Rintaro was a kid, then leading to another incredibly goofy-ass scene of Rintaro failing to master the power of 3 books. From there, cut over to Buster. Wait, what? Where the fuck have you been? Where the hell were you when Blades was getting murdered by Zuos last episode? Why did nobody tell him about that? What the hell? Before you have time to fully think about that stupid, however, another stupid happens. Buster sees the Medusa monster, and before he can do anything about it, it opens its book and takes a part of the city. Buster then gets a call from Daishinji, and then it cuts to Mei and Toma's bookstore. As she leaves though, she gets taken as well. Cut to the Sword of Logo space where Daishinji's calling Buster, and Kenzan tries to leave to help, but Daishinji tells him to wait, saying how it's nothing they've ever seen before, as 3 places have been taken at once. 1. Unless we're just going to ignore episode 4 like that didn't happen, then yes, this has happened before. 2. Also yes, this has happened before. 15 years ago with the Pillars of Light. The fact that Buster and Slash don't remember that, despite they themselves being here, is stupid and makes no sense. 3. There is a southern base. Do they not get attacks? I talked about it earlier, but why do all of the attacks for the Northern Riders happen in Japan? 4. I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it, period, that nothing like this has ever happened before in the eons that the Sword of Logos has stood for. And 5. How do they know the multiple places are taken at once? Buster was only at the scene of one of them. They don't have a sensor. This will be something that'll be a little bit more relevant next episode, so I'll talk about it then there. Cut to Toma and Kento leave wherever and whatever the hell they were in, and then Caliber walks up on the Munhenshin. You know, despite the fact that the literal last time we saw him, he was henshin. Anyway, he's being blocked up by Plotson, of course, and then he henshins again. Why did you come here on henshin just to henshin again? Kento faces him alone, and even gives Tomo a bike to ride off to Avalon alone with, while he fights Caliber. Cut back to Buster, where Mei is with them. And then Kenzan shows up, and then they watch the Medusa monster turn a random guard to stone for no reason. And then they both henshin into battle. Before Buster can actually fight, he's sucker punched by Zuos, and then Legiel joins the battle. Cut back to Toma and Kento. Toma tells Kento to come with so that way they can settle things closer to the door, which sounds incredibly stupid. Also, how come Caliber doesn't summon a dragon to fly on like how Kento summons a magic carpet? Cut back to Buster and the other riders, where Disaster shows up and surprise attacks Buster. I like how the show doesn't even explain how Disaster is back, it's literally just... Cut back to base, where Sophia asks Daishinji if he's ready to fight too, but he says not yet. The camera then pans down to look at his sword stewing in some lights. Things are looking pretty grim, but just then, Rintaro comes out of Liberation, apparently having mastered Volume 3 power. You know, if things are looking pretty grim, Sophia, why didn't you ask for help from the southern base? Especially since, as we find out later, there are swordsmen there too. Cut back to Toma and Kento, who are now on foot for some reason. They make it to the light, but then Caliber shows up. Kento tries to fend him off, but gets swiftly dealt with. Anyone remember episode 4, when Kento was clearly able to in base fend off Caliber's finisher? Me either. Caliber then rushes at Toma, but since he has his belt on too, the energies of their belts summon their dragons and cause it to merge at the light, causing a door to be summoned forth. Caliber tries to rush at Toma again, but gets stalled by Espada. Toma then uses this opportunity to go inside the door, but once inside, he only finds a void of white. But then a man in robes appears and says that if he doubts it, it won't be, but if he believes, it will be. He also tells Toma to not seek the power, but Toma practically begs for it. Cut back to the other riders who are now unable to fight back for the most part and now taking a beating due to the third time jacker having Mei by the neck. And I say for the most part, only because Kenzan is still fighting while this is going on. Regardless, Zuo says fuck that plan though, and prepares to throw Mei up in the air with the plans of eating her. But she gets saved by Rintaro, leading to a romance. Rintaro then goes Volume 3 and prepares to tear into Zuos. I love the fantastic lion suit, as well as the jingle. It was my favorite jingle for a little while. It quickly got trumped though by other ones. But as I said, the suit looks great too. After going Volume 3, Rintaro beats the shit out of Zuos, causing him to run away like a little bitch. Oh, okay. The other writers even comment on how strong Rintaro is, as if he were the main character or something. Cut back over to the real main character, where the man in robes is still telling Toma that if he doubts it, it won't be, and if he believes it will be, and while Toma doesn't get it at first, he closes his eyes and reaches out and grabs his new book, and new power, King of Arthur. Then the man in robes says thus begins the trial to prove your real worthiness. Then the man in robes somehow teleports Toma away to the area where the overlords were from Gaim. Some ruins. And then a weird specter monster shows up and attacks Toma. Cut back to Rintaro, who's basically leading the charge against the monsters, even reflecting an attack back at the Medusa monster, before leading it with a finisher and completely destroying it. With the day totally, absolutely being saved, except no, it isn't. And I guess this ass just unceremoniously left off camera because he's just gone inexplicably. Okay. Anyway, cut back to Toma, who manages to successfully hench in against the monster and just destroys it with one big slash finisher. I'm glad you struggled against that. Okay. The episode ends with Tassel saying how he's happy for both Rintaro and Toma, but he also wonders who the man in robes could be and what his trial could be for Toma, leading directly into episode 8, the sealed one, Arthur, which begins again. Another narration recap by Tassel, who's once again flying for no reason. The episode itself opens up with Toma surprised that he can henshin again, but also wonders if the King of Arthur power has accepted him yet. Whatever the hell that could possibly mean. Before you or I could possibly understand what the hell that could mean for the show, though, Toma is randomly attacked by a random book monster. Nah, I'm just kidding. The man in robes in Avalon actually gave Toma the book, and also tells him that it's up to him to draw out its power. Meanwhile, back with Kento first from getting his ass beat from Caliber, Caliber says that the point in him being here is now none. Espada then demands Caliber again tell him why he betrayed the guild, but Caliber simply walks away and tells him that one day he will understand, leaving Kento to stew in his rage and in sand. And then Toma comes up and sees Kento eating sand. That's a lot of sand in your face, Kento, that's gross. Kento then asks Toma if he's okay, and Toma says yes, he says it ominously. Cut to the man in Avalon who says that once Toma's mastered his power, they will meet again. Kinda. Not really. We'll see later. After the OP though, the riders return back to base unbeknownst to them taking Mei back with them, also to the surprise of Sophia, and while Kenzan tries to take her away first, Buster stops him and Rinto vouches for her, as well as Sophia just overall giving the okay. And then Toma walks in, surprised to see Mei here. Cut back to the Time Jacker ripoffs plus Caliber, discussing the failure of Caliber to obtain the power of Avalon. Caliber thinks for some reason that the power may be too much for him to handle. For some reason. The nameless Time Jacker ripoff seems interested in it, but also wants to let Caliber in on something, but cut back to the sort of logo space, where Mei is just excited to be here. Toma attempts to give the books that he got from Avalon to Daishinji, but in response to the thick book, Daishinji says... And in response to King of Arthur, Daishinji also says... Meaning it is up to Toma this episode himself to get the problem done. Stew the fact that Daishinji can't analyze these books away for literally the next episode. Toma says that he may not be able to master these powers, to everyone's shock, for some reason. But everyone says that they're willing to help if Toma needs help, but then Buster comes in bringing Sora with him. Hey guys, can you guess what's gonna happen this episode? Here's a hint, it's either about Buster or his kid. For fuck's sake, show, give me a goddamn break. Where the fuck has the kid been for the past 4 episodes? There isn't even a throwaway line to explain where the kid's been for the past 4 episodes. God damn it, use the kid not being here as an opportunity to expand the lore of the show more than just nothing at all. Use the kid not being here to tell me something about these characters because I know nothing about any of them. God damn it. As Buster comes in, he lets everybody know the places are still taken. How does Buster know the places are still taken? How does Daishinji know the places aren't still taken? How did Daishinji know last episode the places were taken at once? How did they think that the monster being defeated last episode would save the day for 3 different areas at once? Especially if nothing like this has ever happened before for them. Why did they act as though at the end of last episode and at the beginning of this episode as if everything was okay when it wasn't? Actually, no, never mind. It doesn't matter, because Kamen Saber is just a kid show, so it doesn't matter. Oh, you must be new here, because those arguments don't fly here. Also, they're retarded. Kamen Rider has always been a kid show, ever since its inception, and you can never take that aspect away. Even at its darkest, you can also never take that aspect away. Saying it's a kid show does not take away the fact that what I've stated this far has been shit. Calling it a kid show does not take away the fact that there are plot holes in this show. Get better arguments to defend your shit shows, or just admit that the things you like are shit. Conversely, if it's okay for a show to be shit simply because it's a kid show, then what about the shows that are good in this same franchise? What about them? They're also kid shows. Why do you care? Do you not see how stupid this is? Do you not see how stupid you sound and hypocritical you sound saying these stupid things? Stop it! All the writers prepare to head out, but when they ask Toma and he doesn't answer since he's still concerned about whether he can master the power of King of Arthur or not, they all get worried, but they all begin to head out regardless. Once they head over, the writers just watch a Medusa monster turn them some random writer cameos to stone, since Gaim was having a cameo while this episode was going on, as you do. The Medusa monster tries to turn all the rioters to stone, but thanks to some quick words from Buster, they all get prepared. But in doing so, it leaves Toma open for a sucker punch from Caliber, which Toma takes personally for some reason. All the riders then henshin into battle, and Caliber fights Toma solo, but he quickly outmatches him. All the riders then say how Toma's acting weird and out of character, and honestly, it's just forced dialogue. Toma then tries to fight Caliber alone, but then it's revealed that another Medusa monster is here. Toma then says how it's just like the Great Myth, explaining why there's 3 of them. Oh, okay, show. Then why were there multiple piranha monsters that got destroyed? Why did the Golem monster come back? Why didn't the bad guys attack the riders with all 3 Medusa monsters at once? The 3rd Medusa monster tries to tangle up Toma with its tentacles or whatever, and Buster tries to save him but gets his sword knocked away in the process, causing him to dehenshin, but he still rushes at the Medusa monster, getting himself turned to stone in the process, basically killing him. Before Buster gets turned to stone though, he says that Toma better promise to win this one. Why the fuck did he do that? Was it to give Toma motivation? Why is he even doubting himself to begin with? Toma already knows the story of King of Arthur. This is proven at the end of this episode and last episode.
King Arthur が死を悟り向かった島の長浜アーサー王も仲間である円卓の騎士たちを信じたからこそこんな強大な敵にも打ち勝てたんだ
So what the fuck was the point in Toma losing his powers in the first place? To only have him learn a lesson that he already knew to begin with? All the while fake killing off a character? Fuck you, Saber. And let's talk about Buster, shall we? Well, attentive listeners may actually take note that that's only the 2nd time that I've said Kamen Buster's name. That's because I withhold the names of characters who don't have names. Buster doesn't have a character aside from here is my sword and here is my kid, so I haven't felt the need to dignify him by calling him his name. So even if this was his death, it's not, I wouldn't actually care. And that can basically extend to the entire cast, by the way. I know nothing about any of them aside from they are the writers they are. And I don't care that I'll learn more things about him later. The show wants me to care about him now in the fake out death that they're doing now. Also, again, why did he allow himself to get turned to stone? Why didn't he lead in with a finisher to save Toma like he did with Kento only a few episodes prior? Toma, enraged, blames himself for Buster's death and also breaks free from the Medusa monster's gross tentacle things and jumps over to Buster's sword and books, though he can quickly take out the Medusa monster, but he gets in turn quickly countered by Caliber, who for some reason has a red book of his own. Huh. Caliber then uses the red book he has and slams Toma into a wall, causing him to brutally fall down some stairs into henshin. Caliber then tries to finish Toma off with a finisher, but he gets saved by Blades in Volume 3, and they all retreat back to base, but only after Toma makes some weird faces at the camera for some reason. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base, where everybody sad-heartedly walks back in the base, and Toma gives Sora Buster's book. The fucking thing is bigger than he is. What the fuck is he even supposed to do with it? And does he even know what the books do? Has Buster had that talk with him? Otherwise, what the hell is he even supposed to do with that thing? Because he won't be able to become Buster. Soma takes it the most to heart and heads back to his bookshop with Sora close behind. Daishinji says that the stress of King of Arthur must be getting to Toma, but everyone says that they believe in him regardless. Why though? Most of you only have known Toma for, I don't know, like a week at most. I mean, he does know who his spot is, right? Cut back to a moping Toma back at his bookshop who gets straight up by Sora. You know, Sora's taking his dad's potential death pretty fucking well. I guess the only lesson Buster ever taught Sora was memento fucking mori, because Jesus fucking Christ. You know, they could just tip over your dad's corpse while he's a statue or something, or they could just hold him for ransom and steal all the other riders' swords. Neither of these things happen, as you can no doubt tell, because good writing is hard. Mei then tries to have Toma complete a new manuscript since he's in a better mood now, but since she's been with the riders the whole time, she actually completely forgot that he already did that. And it's thanks to the efforts of Sora and Mei that Toma's feeling chipper again. But then he has an awkward anime moment where he remembers the characters that he's fighting with. The line that Buster says here is the line that he says right before he's getting turned to stone. The line that Rintaro says is the line that he says before they all go out to fight the Medusa monsters. But then the line that Kento says is the line that they say when in Avalon. It's just a little weird is all, since Kento said a line to Toma before they went to fight the Medusa monsters, just like Rintaro. Anyway, Toma begins to think that he's been wasting too much time. He then begins to write a story, one where he and his friends can all save the world. Although I'm not quite sure what that's going to do with the upcoming fight. Not unless Toma can see the future. Anyway, cut to a scene with the Time Tracker ripoff that serves no purpose other than to say that Zeus is still hurt from Blades' beatdown and that Legiel is about to do something. Cut back to the Sword of Logo space, where everybody prepares to head off when Toma comes inside with a plan. Not really, but you'll see. Kenzan then tells Toma to not come if he's still not feeling up to it, but Toma simply ignores it and asks Kenzan if he has any trump cards up his sleeve, getting Kenzan excited. Toma says they'll need it for the plan/story he came up with. Cut over to Legiel and the Medusa monster, who haven't tipped over the Buster statue and aren't holding it for ransom for some reason, and then the riders show up. All of the riders then hench into battle, and then the Medusa monster shows up, and then Caliber shows up. But this is all going according to Toma's plan, as is written. His plan apparently going like this. Feign getting your asses kicked for a little while, fight the monsters, wait until Legiel summons the Medusa monster, or until the Medusa monster just randomly shows up, whichever one comes first, and then fight for real. This is the most retarded plan in Kamen Rider, and we're not even at the dumb part of the episode yet. 1. Why did they all follow this plan? They all could have gotten hurt or far worse by following it. 2. Why didn't they ransom Buster's body for the Rider's sword and books? They need those for the endgame, right? 3. If they aren't going to ransom Buster's body for more swords and books, why don't they tip him over? They need the Rider's swords and books, not the Rider. Again, just tip him over. 4. Why did they summon the third Medusa monster? They don't need to because of the aforementioned points. 5. What happens if they actually ransom for Buster's body? Or what happens if they just tip him over? Then Toma's plan would have been absolutely fuck all then, wouldn't it? Man, it's a good thing this is a kid's show, huh? Espada and Blades go volumes 2 and 3 respectively, and Kenzan and Espada are tasked with fighting Caliber, apparently since when they fight together they'll become multitudes stronger. Kenzan then whips out his trump card, going volume 2, gaining the upper hand on Caliber for a bit. Blades meanwhile is fighting Legiel, surpassing his limits apparently as is written in the story. Toma all the while is fighting both the Legiel monsters solo. Then Toma says how he has a power much stronger than King of Arthur, his friends. And then King of Arthur glows, meaning he has a power actually stronger than friendship. Good job, show. And the Medusa monster, uses its tendrils or something to grab onto some rocks that are there for some reason, then starts flying. Is that part of the Greek myth too? The second Medusa monster then throws some rocks at Toma, but thanks to the mastered power of King of Arthur, Toma has a big sword at his side, in addition to the little sword he has in his hands. And then he in one slash defeats the second Medusa monster. The third Medusa, however, is none too happy that its sister just got destroyed, or brother, or whatever, and then it grows big, as if it were a Super Sentai monster, and then a big fucking meteor appears out of nowhere. I'm sorry, do you want to run that by me again? Did Sephiroth get the black materia? What the hell happened? Well, it's not like it'll matter to Toma, who quickly uses his finisher, and by proxy turns the big sword into a giant robot. As you do. The big robot then knocks the Medusa monster out of the way, and then Saber becomes, well, a saber for the giant robot. Also as you do. Then in one slash he destroys the meteor. And then for good measure, he just finishes off the Medusa monster. Wow. Caliber and Legiel see what Saber just did and decide to dip. Buster gets unstuck. And all the riders then bask in a Rattles hard fought. Can we just talk about how much of a shitty ripoff of the Dragonite Hunter arc this is? And how kind of ironic that sounds out loud. What does Toma know about any of these characters? Well, he knows that Rintaro and Kenzan are part of the Sword of Logos, and he hated Kenzan at first, but he knows who Espada is, right? I mean, he's his best friend after all. In Exaid, Emma already knows lots of things about the characters before certain events in the show, like how Kiryu's friend died in a car crash due to Buckster virus, how Hiro's girlfriend died due to Buckster virus, and how Taiga was the one who failed to save her, thus adding to their dynamic and relationship throughout the show. He also knows that everyone knows that he's naive, which is something that he uses to his advantage.
やっぱり僕にはオペは無理です。でも優秀な外科医のヒーローさんならお譲りします。ドラゴナイトハンター Z。
This was good because it showed Hiro's want to be a good doctor as well as his already established good gamer skills. This is retarded because it revolves around everyone following a plan that could have gotten everyone hurt or worse, and it revolved around a bunch of things happening and not having to have happened in order to have worked. Once back at base, Buster basks in a battle hard fought. And then Sophia remarks how everyone's became such a great team, and I can't help but laugh and refer you to my earlier rants. And then the camera pans down to Slash's book, Hansel Nuts Till Gretel, and I get it, show he's a writer. I got it as soon as Sophia called him Slash, I got it. And then Buster takes Sora up to the place that Sophia usually stands and says birth to the new king or something. Foreshadowing? Who cares? Cut over to Tassels crashing through his roof, complete with a crotch shot. He's astonished that the power of King of Arthur would be a robot, but he's also surprised that Toma could make such deep bonds with such friends in such short time. The episode itself doesn't end there, however, but with Caliber looking at a photo of the previous Saber, the previous Caliber, and Sophia, alone in a room for some reason. Leading directly into episode 9, Harmonize, the Swordsman of Sound, or Timber. It says Timber, but it's Sound. Whatever, it begins with another intro recap by Tassel, but he also talks about how amazing Kamiyama Toma is. He also talks about how amazing it was that Toma mastered the power of King of Arthur, and how it was a robot. He also talks about how if it's amazing that Toma should be a writer instead of a writer, since he's so amazing at that. He also warns us of a new writer coming soon. Foreshadowing perhaps? Anyway, the episode opens up with Sophia remarking how it's so amazing that Toma mastered the power of King of Arthur. Buster gives Toma some praise, but Kenzan simply says that he's still got a long ways to go. You know, Sophia, when are you ever going to be useful for once? Tassel literally just explained how it was cool that Toma mastered the power of King of Arthur. And Kenzan? Shut up. Toma surpassed you a long time ago. Cut back to Toma's bookshop where he's going through a bunch of ideas he's written down on sticky notes for a book he wants to write. He's written down a bunch of stuff like the Sword of Logos, the books in general, the monsters. This will be the Heisei gimmick, or should I say Reiwa era gimmick of the show, first done since Kuga, where the writer has something that they like doing or something that they want to do, and by the end not only will they do it, but they'll do it fantastically. A writer's wants and goals can actually be very simple, like wanting to learn how to cook, wanting to go on a trip, or they can be something personal, like wanting to find a world to yourself, or wanting to come back to life, or they could be something grand, like wanting to be king, or wanting to defeat an evil alien. Toma's goal, in turn, is probably going to be something along the lines of, I want to write a story where me and my friends save the world. Simple enough, I guess. I just wish I knew who these friends of his were. Cut over to Caliber and the Time Jacker ripoffs where they're making preparations to make an upgrade for Caliber. Using the power of 3 altar books. Wait a minute. Why is it just now that we learn that an altar book was in episode 9? Christ, this shit's worse than CO because we didn't learn until episode 8 what a fucking Ride Watch did. Christ. Don't make kids wait 9 fucking episodes into the show just to learn what the fuck their toys do. God, kids aren't patient enough for this shit. The nameless Time Jacker explains that through the help of the 3 altar books, Jaku Dragon, and some ride books that the riders have, they can make a power even stronger than King of Arthur. After the OP, though, we stay with the Time Jacker ripoffs, with the Nameless one specifically going from behind the painting that we saw in episode 1 to pull another book out from behind it, presumably with the intention to summon another monster. But then Zeus and Legiel show up, apparently being pissy with the Nameless Time Jacker ripoff, since summoning a monster will get in the way of their plans or something. I'm not quite sure, they never really talked about any plans or anything, so I'm a little confused, but... Also, the show gives us, finally, the Nameless Time Jacker ripoff's name. Storius. I'm just saying it because I forgot. Back at the Sword of Logospace, Sophia and Buster are talking about why Calibur's been doing what he's been doing, and then Espada comes in, so they stop talking about it due to his sake, but he tells them not to worry. Buster in turn then tells Kento to not put on a brave face, but then Kenzan tells Buster to say that Kenzan is strong. Sophia then tells Buster and Kenzan to go look for stuff in a special, and then cut over to Storius, who summons a duck monster. Oh, okay. Cut back to the Sword of Logospace, where Daishinji begins analyzing the King of Arthur ride book. He says that if he can analyze it, he'll be able to make new and stronger books for the team. How can he analyze it though? I thought he couldn't, because last episode he said... Also, what the fuck does he even mean when he says he'll be able to make new books? Stew that idea away though until part 3, however. And then Toma walks in, bringing Mei with him. He asks where Buster and Ren are, but Sophia says that they're experts in battle who have roles to play, as does Slash. And then Toma thanks Slash for doing all the maintenance on their swords so far. Toma then says that there's nothing they can't do as long as they all do it together. And then Sophia says she has a present for Mei. And it's a big fucking plot hole of a thing. Mei notices that a book is glowing near the area that Sophia usually stands at, so she goes up to go check. When she opens it though, she sees a part of the city getting taken and attacked. How long has this been in the show though? Why did they have this installed in the base? Why was Rintaro looking for bubbles instead of using this? I'd love to answer those questions, but this is just a kid show after all. Anyway, Toma, Rintaro, and Espada prepare to head out, but when Daishinji is still analyzing the King of Arthur ride book, they just tell him to bring it later. Once the riders show up to the attack, they see the swarm of duck monsters, and the riders show up, with the show not really explaining why there's multiple. The show can't even be bothered to explain the bare fucking basics, and yet people will just simply tell me to appreciate this show? Just because these actors got a paycheck? Fuck you. That's all I have to say. Talking about the fight that the riders are in for a second here, they're actually displaying some pretty good unhinged choreography shots, mostly on account of the action director this episode being Koichi Sakamoto, a pretty good action director who's been doing some pretty good tokusatsu direction all the way back since Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Zeo. He's a pretty good director and knows his stuff. Even after henching, the riders get swarmed by the duck monsters and they struggle due to one of them being invisible, and then Caliber shows up to make things more complicated. Espada tries to fight him first, but he finds that his attack simply gets absorbed or blocked by Caliber. That's one. Cut back to the Time Jacker ripoffs where they watch a puppet hand write in some books while some dark energy billows out of it. You know, as opposed to the last time we saw this happen. Then it did. Anyway, cut back to Blades, who has his shot at Caliber, and only to find his attack gets blocked or absorbed as well. That's two. Cut back to the Sword of Logospace, however, where Daishinji notices all of what's going on, takes the King of Arthur ride book, and heads towards the back. At the same time as this happens, however, a girl walks through the front door, and Sophia apparently knows who she is. She asks if that's the new saber too. Cut over to Daishinji, who walks through his back door, and picks up his sword, Suzune. If anybody's wondering about the blue door from episode 5, yeah, I don't know either. And until this girl gets her name revealed, I'm going to be calling her girl number 3. Okay? Good. Cut back to Toma versus Caliber, where Toma asks why Caliber's doing what he's doing. Caliber simply says that it's in human nature to betray others and then he doesn't need friends. And after beating up Toma for a little bit, he says that the things in front of him may not be the exact truth, but eventually he will gain absolute power, and by proxy gain something called the eternal truth. Toma tries to challenge this idea, but as the two continue to fight, the energies of their belts burst forth, and the memories of the previous saber rush into Toma's mind. After all of that happens though, Caliber simply says that Rekka is not Toma's to wield and he cuts him down. Cut back to the Sword of Logospace, where Sophia may have figured out where Caliber's identity is, and leaves to try and figure out if she's right. And Mei tries to leave too, but girl number 3 stops her. Mei asks who she is, but then it cuts back to the riders. Espada tries to fight Caliber solo, but then he gets knocked aside for his troubles. Ugh. And then one of the dumbest fucking things in the show happens. Caliber then puts all of the riders in paralysis via a binding spell. How long has he had this ability for? Why didn't he use it sooner? Why didn't he use this when they were all in Avalon? I guess he didn't want King of Arthur bad enough. Whatever. And then Caliber walks up to Espada and Rintaro and takes one book from each of them. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why don't you kill them? Why don't you steal all of their books? Why don't you steal all of their swords and books? What is wrong with these people? And then Slash shows up and makes fun of the writer's situation. Fuck you, asshole. After showing up with his sword fixed and rocking new duds, Slash then dodges an invisible duck monster thanks to his good hearing, and then henshins into battle. I love the Slash suit. Magenta truly is a perfect color after all. It looks great, the colors just mend well together, I love his sword play. I also like his sword, the sword gun of Sound Suzune, but if I had a problem with it, I'd say that it looks too much like the Wizard Head sword gun and the O's driver mended together, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Also, his character sucks. Anyway, Slash effortlessly deals with all the duck monsters, and then switches it up to Volume 2, but the problem is, he goes crazy whenever he uses it. After going Volume 2, Slash effortlessly deals with the rest of the duck monsters, and then uses a finisher on the other riders and frees them from Caliber's binding spell. I'm sorry, what? How did he use this? No, I'm serious, I have no fucking clue however he used this. He just fucking does. And then he gives King of Arthur back to Toma, and then Toma switches out Storming Eagle for King of Arthur, even though he could have used King of Arthur with Storming Eagle still in the belt. But whatever. He puts in King of Arthur and uses a finisher on Caliber, with Caliber challenging it with one of his own using his red book. The two clash with Saber winning it, but not only that, he wins the red book that Caliber had. Then Toma takes out King of Arthur to go Volume 3 using his new red book, Sayu Journey. 1. Remember when Slash debuted just a minute ago? What the hell, Saber, don't steal the spotlight. 2. Why did they build up King of Arthur for 3 episodes if he was immediately gonna replace it with this? Whatever. He gets into a battle with Caliber, and even in Volume 3, Caliber's holding his own pretty well. What the hell? Then we pan over to the other riders, who promptly take out their duck monsters rather effortlessly. Cut back over to Toma, who begins to use a finisher on Caliber, but then he blocks it with one of the duck monsters, as well as absorbs most of it with whatever he was doing. That's 3. And then he just leaves. Cut back over to the Sword of Logo space, where girl number 3 is excited to see how good Saber is, and then it pans down to reveal that she has a yellow book for some reason. Cut back to the riders, where Toma nearly passes out of book fatigue again. Apparently using 3 books together of the same color is harder than using normal books, and Toma can eventually overcome this with training, but spoilers, we never see that, and next episode he uses this power again and he's fine. So, no. Then Toma looks down at the new book he got, Sayu Journey, and remembers about 15 years ago with the girl that he used to read with, as well as a boy he used to play with who he can't remember for some reason. I'm sorry, what? Shouldn't it be Kento? Kento literally just looks and hears at this and does nothing about this. What? Anyway, Toma then says he now knows what he wants to write about. A story about him and his friends. Just like I said earlier. Also, like I said earlier, I'd like to know who these friends of his are. And then they all vow to take down Caliber and get their ride books back. And they make it personal for some reason. Cut over to Caliber, who's in some random forest, cutting a hole of darkness into the air for some reason, and then Sophia walks up behind him, coming out of a light portal of whatever. Sophia asks who Caliber is, but Caliber simply ignores that question and asks one of his own. He asks if it's okay for her to be away from the base since he knows what should happen, and then he tries to strike her down, with Buster coming right the fuck out of nowhere, with Caliber punching him away for his troubles and making off after quickly. Sophia then rushes over to Buster to help him up, but then cut over to Tassel, who wonders who Caliber could be, and also finds all of this very interesting. Ending the episode. Why hello everyone! I know I said at the beginning of the video that I wouldn't talk about the swords and specials, but since this video is taking so long, I thought I'd actually do that. Also, Saber ended, so we're gonna do that. Only the first two specials as far as the show is concerned for right now, with the first special taking place before Daishinji fixed his sword, even being labeled as episode 8.5 to go for show. Every special begins with an episode narration by Tassel, who talks about what the Sword of Logos is and who the writer is, or writers are, in case of this special, or for the special. We begin in the Sword of Logos base with Daishinji analyzing the King of Arthur ride book, and then Buster shows up. He asks if Slash has made any progress on any ride books, with Slash saying not yet, but he says that eventually he should be able to using the power of multiple ride books. However the fuck that's supposed to work. Buster then says how much respect he has for Daishinji's family since they made the Bookgates and Gatorike phones, although Buster only remarks about the Bookgates and Gatorike phones and not Diego Speedy. Whatever. Buster then tries to touch Slash's sword, but Slash doesn't want it being touched for whatever reason, saying that he doesn't want a repeat of what happened 15 years ago, leading to a flashback of 15 years ago, with it looking the same as Toma's flashback, with all of the riders fighting and monsters fighting. Cut over to Slash fighting a bunch of monsters by himself. He quickly cuts down a batch using his finisher, but then more show up plus disaster. Things are looking grim for him, but then Buster shows up in the nick of time to save him, but the two don't have much time to chat as Buster goes on the offensive against disaster. Slash switches his sword to gun mode and goes on the offensive, but the numbers just don't stop. Meanwhile, switch over to the girl who got taken where she gets taken, and then the old man who says his catchphrase and then causes his explosion again, destroying all the monsters even near Slash and Buster, except Toma. He's fine. He was point blank right next to Kamiju when he caused that explosion, but nah, he's fine. Okay, show. Cut over to Buster and Slash, who are surprised to see all the monsters destroyed, but then Slash's sword starts sparkling and cracking for some reason. And then he just dehensions. I'm sorry, what? Slash then says his sword is weeping. Flash forward to the present, where Slash explains that since he didn't hear his sword's cries, it fell to slumber. No, I'm sorry, what? 1. Can that just happen to any rider? Like, at any point? How did that happen? Why did that happen? Did you not take care of your sword? 2. Can this just happen to anyone? I'd say this is dumb at face value, but to a degree, Buster, Slash, Kenzan, and Caliber are swinging around their belts, so to a degree I can understand the maintenance thing, but what causes it to happen? Steer this idea away for later, though. It'll be more important then. I'm just saying I'd like a little more explanation to this shit is all. Like, what about the previous saber? What the hell did he do when he caused that big explosion? And why the hell did Toma live from it? He doesn't have a scratch. And no, this little stunt doesn't count because that doesn't happen until after the explosion. Whoops. Anyway, Slash then says that his new duty is to putting his all into doing good maintenance on the sword, since doing good maintenance on the swords not only keeps the swordsmen alive, but lets them fight to their fullest. Slash then says that the bride book that Toma got from Avalon has immense power. Exactly what he said about King of Arthur, by the by, but whatever. He says that the key to unlocking it may lie with the young swordsman, and then they play a clip from episode 10 to kind of spoil things, but that's for later. Buster and Slash then talk about how things could have gotten so bad, but they part ways in jest, with Buster saying that he also needs to pick up Sora. Slash then says that it's about time his sword wakes up. Not quite ending the episode there, though. The special ends with Disaster saying how he wonders how many swordsmen will die or survive this time. Although it's a little unclear when this is, whether it's the past or the present, and it's also unclear when he was sealed considering, remember episode 4? Disaster was sealed. Regardless of that point, however, wow, this fucking special was terrible. What did I learn about Slash? Well, I learned that his family made the Bookgates and Gatorike phones and not Diego Speedy, and I learned his sword stopped working for some reason. The latter of which leaves a lot to be desired in terms of questions being unanswered, and like I said, doesn't explain whether or not Diego Speedy was made by them, and the former is something we already knew due to the nature of watching the show. We already knew that Slash's sword was broken. And that's just about Slash. What did we learn about Buster? Well, we learned that he fought Disaster. And nothing else. What else do we learn about him? And that's why I call them Buster and Slash. Moving on to the next special, it's about Kenzan, or tries to be anyway. It actually takes place during episode 9 as opposed to the last special, and opens up with Sophia asking Buster and Kenzan on their thoughts about Caliber, with Sophia saying that she thinks that Caliber's been acting strange lately. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. The special cuts this in where Kenta walks in, so the scene just ends with Buster and Kenzan leaving as per Sophia's orders as per normal. Cut over to Buster and Kenzan walking around in a forest somewhere sometime later, with Buster explaining that since Caliber can cut through dimensions via his blade Kurayami, they can track him via darkness particles or something. They don't really explain. Buster then stops and remembers why Caliber betrayed the guild, or tries to question it, and then thinks back about what Sophia said, about how Caliber was acting strange. He then in turn thinks that Sophia was acting strange, and then he goes to run off and try to find her. He clearly doesn't go back to the base, right? So where does he go? And why doesn't he go back to base? Where does he go? Also, what was so strange about Sophia saying that Caliber was acting strange lately? So strange so that Buster felt the need to go out and find her. Why doesn't he just go back to base? Better yet, why doesn't he call back to base using the phone we know both him and Daishinji both have? Where the fuck is he going? Kenzan gets just as mopey about Buster leaving as I am, and he wishes he was on a mission with Kento instead, leading to a flashback with Kenzan having a conversation of sorts with Kento about Toma. Kenzan says that he wishes that Toma had a little more strength and didn't rely on ride books, and while Kento can agree, he says that Toma will eventually have a power that even him and Rintaro lack someday, and be a great swordsman. Cut to the present where Kenzan does acknowledge that Toma got to Avalon and mastered the power of King of Arthur, he still thinks that Toma's got a long way to go. And then his ass shows up wanting to fight. I am sorry, what? Is this seriously happening right now? Yes. Disaster apparently was looking for Caliber, and in turn looking for the book that he had from him, for some reason. But he'll settle with fighting Kenzan instead. Kenzan doesn't want to at first, but as soon as Disaster strokes Kenzan's ego, he can't refuse. Kenzan henshin's in a battle, but it's here that they play the full reading of his book, as well as they also play a cutaway henshin for him. Not like it matters, as we'll see. The two get into a fairly brutal battle, with Kenzan remarking that Disaster's stronger than before, which doesn't seem accurate since Kenzan had to go Volume 2 to fight Disaster last time, and he doesn't here, but whatever. Disaster ignores the comment and then asks why Kenzan fights. Kenzan doesn't really answer at first, but then he then says that strength is justice and justice is strength. Disaster then tells Kenzan that strength and justice aren't necessarily the same thing, something a fucking child could have told him by the by. Disaster then asks Kenzan if he'd want to see what comes from ultimate strength, but Kenzan says no, saying that if he had ultimate strength he wouldn't be able to get any stronger. Disaster laughs and then asks Kenzan to join him. Kenzan of course says no, and the two get into one last little scuffle, with Disaster telling Kenzan that something big is about to happen, with the two using a finisher on each other, with Disaster making off quickly after. Cut over to Disaster on a rooftop nearby, where he says that Kenzan is one of them. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. And then cut over to Kenzan, who says that he will continue to find the path towards infinite strength. Whatever the fuck that means, and then his shoelace snaps or something. Not quite ending the special there. Cut over to Caliber, cutting a dimensional hole somewhere, and then Sophia walks out of her own little wormhole thingy, with the rest of the special playing out how it did in episode 9, and Buster showing up to get punched away for his troubles, with the special picking up after Caliber leaves. Buster chastises Sophia like a little child, with Sophia even looking like a child in this scene. Ugh. Buster says to leave Fukamiya-san to him, with him also saying that if he can put Caliber to an end, then Kento may be able to get some rest sooner. Sophia then says that she feels like Kento may be hurt regardless of who Caliber is, surprising Buster for some reason. Wow, another terrible special. Again, what did I learn about Kenzan? Well, I learned that him and Disaster fought at some point. And that's just about Kenzan. What about Buster? For all intents and purposes, I thought this was the Kenzan special, not the Buster and Kenzan special. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can still call it the Buster and Kenzan special. I learn about as much as I do here as the Slash and Buster special, so fuck it. It's officially the Kenzan and Buster special now. How did he even know where Caliber was here? That just... what? Whatever. Episode 10, United Swords and Crossing Emotions, begins with... another intro recap by Tassel, except he also talks about a few things, the first of which is Wonder Ride combos. He talks about Wonder Ride combos being incredibly powerful, and that he's astounded that the riders are getting powerful, but he's also worried of the side effects that may happen to the riders, which, spoilers, never really happens. The second thing he talks about is the Sword of Darkness, Caliber's sword, Kurayami. He remarks that it's so strong because it's the second sword ever made. And I'm not going to lie, saying something is the first sword ever made is not an excuse to explain anything. This is the first car ever made. Therefore, it's the fastest car ever made. This is the first gun ever made. Therefore, it's the strongest gun ever made. Or better yet, this is the first arrow. Therefore, oh wait. Anyway, I'm also going to take a moment here to talk about the nature of the belts and how they work for a second here. As you can no doubt see, there's 3 slots on the belt. The 3 slots represent the 3 different types of books there are in the show. Saber's Brave Dragon is a mythical creature type. The middle slot is a normal animal type, with the blue book that is Peter Fantasista on screen here being a mythical story type. All of the other writers follow this aesthetic as well, most notably the main trio, with Espada's Not an Alagina book being a main storybook, Blades' Lion Senki book being a normal animal book, and as I said earlier, Toma's Brave Dragon book is a mythical animal book. Although I'm not sure why the main trio exclusively have the ability to have 3 books, nor am I sure why some of the other writers have the ability to only use 2 books, nor am I sure why some writers have the ability to use 1. And I'm sure this lack of knowledge will have no impact on my understanding on the fights or story as we go forward. The episode itself opens up at the Sword of Logos base with Sophia wondering who Caliber is. Cut over to the Time Tracker ripoffs draining the power of the 3 Alterics they have plus the 3 Rider books they stole when they stop for some reason. They say that it simply won't be enough to create the new Ride book, saying that they need absolute power, for some reason also playing a clip of Crimson Dragon. Whatever, Caliber tells the other Time Tracker ripoffs to not worry, and takes the 3 Ride books and leaves ominously. Storius, meanwhile, gives the invisible duck monster that lived last episode a new white book for a power-up. Cut over to Toma's bookshop where Rinto is ecstatically explaining how cool Slash was last episode, but also says that we should probably use Band of a Rock Band less since it changes his personality, although Daishinji has no idea what he's talking about. When Rinto tries to talk with Toma about it, he doesn't answer since he's caught up on thought with Caliber, specifically about what Caliber said last episode. About the truth not being that with what you see with your eyes. And then Toma asks a really dumb question.
ねえ、なんであいつが組織を裏切ったか知ってる？
それは誰も知りません。
Rinto says he may not know why Caliber betrayed the guild, but he does know that he was an amazing swordsman before he left the guild, and that he also remarks that it was unfortunate that they lost the Ride books, although they should have lost all of their books, but whatever! Slash then says that Kuroyami may hold many secrets, but they'll just have to fight for their books back. Slash, you fought side by side with the previous Caliber. How do you not know what that fucking sword does? Toma then thinks that Caliber might have absorbed their attacks instead of blocked them, but that there also might be a limit to what he can absorb considering he didn't absorb all of Crimson Dragon's finisher last episode. They try to get Kento's thoughts on it, but Kento's being emo too. He wonders why his dad wants Toma so badly. And then Mei walks in bringing girl number 3 with her. She apparently wants to see Kento. Alone in private.
Is this a booty call?
After the OP, Kento takes girl number 3 to his emo rooftop as she explains that she's from the southern base, as apparently nobody else knew that she was from the southern base. She also remarks that the southern base is quite worried on the northern base's situation, which is exactly why it took almost 15 years to do anything, you fucking idiot. She also remarks how Kento probably can't beat Caliber on his own like Otoma probably can, which is why she's here to give Kento the yellow book she was seen having last episode, Try Kerberos. Cut to subtime later where Kento goes back to the bookshop and tells everybody that he got an upgrade, as well as the fact that girl number 3 was from the southern base. Mei then asks what the southern base is, leading to Rinto explaining that it's a lot like the northern base except in the South Pole, as well as that there's swordsmen there. One then has to ask a series of questions now that the show has revealed that there's not only a southern base but swordsmen there. 1. Why is there so many swordsmen in northern base? 2. Why didn't Sophia call for help back a few episodes ago when Slash and Rinto couldn't help? 3. Do they get attacks? 4. What is it for? Is it for training new and upcoming swordsmen? And 5. Rintaro, why are you lying? As it's revealed way later in the show, there's a third base. Anyway, Toma thinks that Kento is acting strange, and so does Rintaro, and while Kento tries to brush it off, Toma says that as the battle continues he's getting more of his memory back from 15 years ago, saying that in a recent memory he remembers him playing with a girl as well as a boy that he can't remember again. Wait, didn't he already say this? And doesn't he already know Kento?
昔よく2人でこうやって遊んでたんだ。男の子3人だったのか。あの男の子ケント。
Regardless, Kento then awkwardly leaves back to his emo rooftop. Cut over to the last duck monster who opens his book and takes a part of the city. Cut back to Kento on his emo rooftop thinking about his dad while fingering his hair. Sho, what was the point in having Kento leave the emo rooftop after talking to girl number 3, only to go to the bookshop and talk with everybody else, only to come right the hell back? Mei then shows up to try and cheer up Kento, and then Toma and Rinto show up to try and cheer up Kento. Toma says that he won't force Kento to talk about 15 years ago if he doesn't want to, but he does promise Kento to be there for him should he need him. Kento then says that he thought dealing with Caliber was his own responsibility, and then the three make a promise, not just as friends, but as Kamen Riders, and on their swords as well. And then Mei gets an alert on her book thingy, and then they head off. The riders show up and watch the duck monster do a Garo reference, I think, and then they henshin themselves, immediately taking the fight to a warehouse so that way no more casualties happen. And then Caliber shows up and gets a sneak attack on Toma. Espada begins to fight Caliber solo, and then Slash shows up to help. If anyone's wondering where Buster and Kenzan are, they're not showing up because shut up. Slash then henshins to battle himself, and then cut over to Toma, who uses Storming Eagle in a Volume 2 finisher, which Caliber simply absorbs. That's 4. Toma then goes in actual Volume 2 proper using the red book he got last episode, Sayu Journey, and seemingly evens the playing field until Caliber simply swipes him away, or something. Rinto says that Toma must still be affected by using Volume 3 from yesterday, and goes Volume 2 to help them out. Slash in the meanwhile goes Volume 2 and begins to fight the duck monster solo. The three riders then try to dogpile on Caliber, but the Dark Rider simply charges up a triple rider sword finisher and slashes away the three riders, and then girl number 3 shows up and simply watches. Toma then goes Volume 3 and tries to fight Caliber solo, but then Caliber charges up with another sword finisher using Tenku no Pegasus, and swipes Toma away using another finisher. Espada then uses a Volume 2 finisher and charges up an attack on Caliber, knocking off the Tenku no Pegasus ride book for Rintaro, allowing him to go Volume 3 and fight Caliber solo. Kento then uses another finisher in base and strangles Caliber, knocking off the Needle Hedgehog ride book, allowing Kento to go Volume 3. I love the Golden Volagina form. It looks great, his swordplay looks great, and his jingle sounds fantastic. The three Volume 3 riders then all actually dogpile on Caliber this time, even all whipping out nifty little rider kicks. Neat. Cut over to Slash, who uses a finisher on the duck monster, seemingly destroying it. Cut back over to the three Volume 3 riders who rush at Caliber using a rider Slash, who simply absorbs all three of them. That's 5, 6, and 7. Cut back to the other Time Jacker ripoffs where the puppet hands that were writing in a book actually stop writing in their book, as the book that they were writing in transforms into a ride book. And Story shows up to let Caliber know. What a nice guy. What a nice guy. The explosion in turn dehenshin Caliber, revealing it to be Kamijo Daiichi. You know, the previous Saber, and the dude who saved Toma. Toma himself is in shock. And cut back to the Sword of Logo space where Sophia is also in shock. And if you're wondering where Buster and Kenzan are, shut up. Cut back to the other riders where Espada is the most in shock. He wonders what the hell happened to his dad in front of Toma, who apparently didn't know that little fact. Espada and Caliber get into one last little scuffle, with Kamijo saying that Kento's dad did in fact betray the guild, but that fact only makes Kento more pissed. Kento then rushes at Caliber, only to get swiftly struck down. Anyone remember episode 4? Christ. And Caliber just walks away. What the fuck is wrong with you people? Toma then begs Kento for some answers on anything 15 years ago about his dad, anything, but he just then gets a flashback about 15 years ago, about the boy that he used to play with. Apparently it was Kento.
昔よく二人でこうやって遊んでたんだ
Kento then leaves back to his emo rooftop to think about his dad and finger his hair some more. Cut over Caliber in the Time Jacker ripoffs where Caliber comes over to get his new upgrade, Jiao Dragon. Although Storius isn't quite sure if a normal human is able to master it though, which just raises the question of what the hell did Runtaro mean when he said that a normal human couldn't lift the Seiken, but whatever. The last thing we see in the episode is Tassel, who remarks that he's worried about Kento, but also says that he have to meet him soon, leading directly into episode 11, Storming Thunder and Spreading of Dark Clouds, which begins
そうそうそうあでもねこれはこれそれはそれですよねあ
with another narration by Tassel, who's on the phone with someone. Okay. He talks about another recap from last episode, but he gets so excited doing so that he hangs up whoever he was talking with. Okay. The episode itself starts with Kento on his emo rooftop thinking about his dad while fingering his hair, and then Toma shows up. Toma says that he remembers that Caliber was the man that saved him 15 years ago, and this puts the idea into Kento's head that if he can stop Caliber, he can save everyone and stop everything. Toma then tries to ask Kento about 15 years ago, but Kento simply says that ignorance is bliss and Toma should be okay with that. Minor point, where's the ocean that they can apparently see back in episode 5? Anyway, after the OP, Toma and Mei worry about Kento, and while Toma says that he thinks Kento will be okay, Mei calls out Toma for not saying it confidently enough, and tries to remind Toma of the promise that the four of them made.
俺ケント凛太郎4
Cut to the Time Jacker buffs where they're marveling at the Swordsman of Sound appearing. They say that now that there's 6 riders, they can begin their plans, and that Legiel has already begun preparations, as well as the fact that his pride must be hurt from previous failures, whatever the fuck that means. 1. I don't know what shit the show is trying to pull, but there's been 6 riders since fucking episode 1. There's Buster and Kenzan, and then there's the main trio of riders. And it doesn't even matter how many riders there are at the Southern Base, since we know that there are riders there. So whatever the villains are doing, they should have been doing it as early as episode 2. But since our villains are retarded, 2. Slash has been a rider since episode 9. So again, why didn't the villains do what they were doing here at episode 9? Is that also why Legiel and Zeus were pissed? The show doesn't explain. 3. Show? I'd appreciate it if you could stop telling us how these characters feel and actually start doing things with them, and also stop showing us scenes with the villains that do nothing except show that they're all the same.
剣士たちの聖剣とワンダーライドブックによって2つの扉が開かれました。残るはあと4つ。
すべての扉が開いたとき、世界は一つになり、不変の真理へと導かれる。
我々は大いなる力を手に入れ、すべてを支配する。残りあと1つ。
扉が開けば2つの世界も大いなる力も我らのもの。
でも雷の剣士は来ますかね。
そこに聖剣さえあれば。
Also show, it really adds to the tension of the villains, the way you keep playing this stupidly comical every single time the villains fucking show up or do anything.
剣士たちの今こそアバロンの力は
Legiel summoned 6 imp, troll, goblin, wingless Tengu creatures. Legiel summoned 6 creatures and they descend into the city. Cut to the Sword of Logo space where Toma and Mei walk in, right into an argument between Rintaro and Kento. Rintaro thinks that Kento's been acting too emo recently. He also says that if Kento can't suppress his feelings as a human, then he can't be a swordsman anymore. And I'm not gonna lie, this comes right the hell out of nowhere. Last episode, they were perfectly fine friends, allegedly. Then Kento finds out that his dad might actually be dead, and now Rintaro just tells Kento to suck it up? Fuck off, Rintaro. Kento's allowed to be as upset as he needs to be considering his dad's actual potential death. With Kento also saying that he's a human first before a swordsman, but then Slash just says that he's had enough and leaves. You know, the veteran fucking rider. This is a personal discussion between 2 of the younger riders. Slash can't take it, so he just fucking leaves? Go fuck yourself, Saber! Rintaro says that if Kento continues to be so emo that he should return his sword at once, since he's unfit to use it. But then Kento says he will return his sword, only after his mission is done, and then he leaves ominously. Mei then gets an alert on her book thingy, and Toma prepares to head off, with Mei preparing to head out as well, but Sophia stops her, to give her something. A key. Sophia then says that it's very important, and then she leaves as well. Cut over to the creatures that Legiel summoned who are killing people, I think, and then Kenzan shows up. I'm sorry, where have you been? You didn't come back to base after your special, which takes place during episode 9, by the way. Cut over to Buster. Hi, remember him too? Who prepares to enter the book world until Disaster shows up to stop him. Cut over to Kento and Rintaro in a scene that I actually kinda can't fucking stand, where Kento somehow tricks Rintaro by running ahead of him, and then stopping and not running away, and then Rintaro stops to talk to him. Kento asks Rintaro if he has any idea what it's like for his father to betray the guild, causing Rintaro to say that he doesn't, because he's an orphan. Rintaro explains that the guild has raised him ever since he was young, causing Kento to act like he didn't know that little fact. Although one has to question how the hell he doesn't know that fact considering both of them were raised by the Sword of Logos, but whatever. Good writing is hard. Rintaro says he swore his life to the guild, but Kento says that that's only his story though, causing him to walk off. But Kento doesn't actually get very far. He stops a little bit after to take a call from girl number 3.
This a booty call?
She apparently called to let Kento know of a meeting happening between Caliber and Sophia. Cut over to Toma fighting the creature summoned for the episode, where he simply shows up to Henshin and fight it. Cut back to Sophia and Caliber talking about stuff. After Caliber dehensions, Sophia says that she's surprised to see him reborn as Caliber, or whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean, but she also says that he must have his reasons. Sophia tries to talk more with Caliber, but Caliber simply interrupts her, saying that she hasn't changed after all these years. Sophia asks if he has, but he simply says that he gave up everything to gain something called the eternal truth. And then Kento shows up, surprised to see Sophia and Caliber talking. Sophia and Rintaro try to let Kento know that things aren't as suspicious as they seem, but he just tells them both to shut up as he prepares to face Caliber alone, saying that he'll make things make sense with his own 2 hands. The two then henshin to fight, with Rintaro going over to defend Sophia. Cut back over to Toma losing against the creature until Slash shows up to help. He even gives Toma his second book, Primitive Rock Band, to help him out, but then Zero shows up to help the creature. Cut back over to Espada having another losing battle of his own against Caliber, with Blade tensioning to help, but Espada just pushes him aside. Espada then asks about 15 years ago and his dad, but Caliber simply tells him to ask his father. When Espada asks about his dad, Caliber says that he cut him down, saying that he was a traitor. Espada then asks what makes Caliber so special, but he just says he's a seeker of eternal truth. Espada then gets beyond pissed from this and rises, and goes Volume 3, evening the gap in power between him and Caliber, but only for a short while. Caliber then respects Kento's new upgrade in found power, and decides to test a newfound power of his own. Jao Dragon. Using this form, Caliber is completely unfazed by Kento's attacks and he completely dogpiles onto him. During the battle, however, Sophia is kidnapped by a mysterious person, and she's taken out of the show for, and I can't quite possibly make this up, literally 10 episodes at least. That seriously just happens. Anyway, cut to the Sword of Logos base where Mei is apparently bored. After messing around with the key all over the base, she finally manages to use it on a book and summon a screen for her to watch Kento and Caliber's fight. Cut over to Tomi using a finisher from Primitive Rock Band on the monster. Then over to Kenzan, who uses a finisher on his monster, but after both riders finish their monsters, their swords start glowing for some reason. Cut over to Legul on a rooftop somewhere, who says that the doors of wind and fire have opened. As he says this, red and green pillars rise out of some book constructs in the city. Cut over to Toma and Slash getting knocked out of the book world. As they both look up at the sky due to the red pillar of energy, Toma gets a flashback of 15 years ago for no reason. I say no reason because this moment will also never be talked about, and the flashback itself has nothing important. Cut over to Dazast and Buster, who stop their fight to look at the pillars of light in the air. Dazast mentions something about something big happening, as well as that this might be the last time the two meet, then throwing a finisher at Buster, then making off quickly after. Then cut over to Caliber and Kento, who use a finisher on each other, with Kento getting hurt and henching brutally. Caliber acknowledges Kento's heart, but laughs at his swordplay and prepares to finish him off, with Rintaro blocking the attack with his body instead of his sword like an idiot, but points for him to trying to get a swipe at Caliber though. Kento then rushes to Rintaro's side. He's severely wounded from Caliber's attack. Rintaro then apologizes to Kento for allowing himself to be controlled by his emotions like how Kento was, but Rintaro also says that Kento isn't just his friend, he's his family. Caliber then walks off, saying how the world may end, but he will have his eternal truth. Ending the episode, and leading directly into episode 12, that place where we made our promise, which begins with another narration recap by Tassel. Only the man in Avalon is there with him though. The episode itself opens up with Rintaro asleep in a room we've never seen before. I know this place has other rooms, it's just weird considering we've never seen them until now. Where is this place? The nurse's office? Just Rintaro's room? We never really learn. Also, Rintaro's alive. Lots of people thought Rintaro just flat out died last episode, but nope, he's alive. For the first thing for us to pretty much see in the episode 2 is Rintaro being alive. That's kind of insulting, show. Fuck you. After Rintaro awakens though, he asks how Kento was doing, and upon learning of his safe being, he goes immediately back to sleep. Cut over to the other riders in the main room, I guess, discussing all that's happened. Or rather a comedy skit playing out about how Buster describes everything that's happened so far, and then Slash says, "They already know that. This is, again, another horrible time for comedy, Saber. Fuck you." Mei then comes into the base and tells everybody that Rintaro was okay and that he tried to ask for Kento, but then she also tries to go off on Kento for doing what he did, but Buster stops her. And then Buster says a line that rings me the wrong way. "Acting on your own in this age could cost you your life." A line that will not only ring all the more true by the end of the episode, but is also a line that kind of exposes how the show was written. It was written less so like a Kamen Rider show and more so in a way where it's just whatever the hell the writer wants. But that'll be made all the more clear by the end of the show. Kento apologizes for the way he's been acting and says he's fine while giving a fake smile, one that only Toma seems to notice is fake though. After the OP, we cut over to the time checker ripoffs who thanked the swordsman for opening up the pillows they have so far, as well as saying that if they can get more pillows open, they can obtain eternal truth, as well as dominate the world. Somehow. Anyway, cut to the other riders would make a plan of action, while also discussing the fact that them doing anything will be a trap regardless. Buster says it doesn't matter, because they have to save the people in those towns. They then discuss more about the Pillars of Light, but as they do so, Kento says something under his breath that implies he may know something about what's going on, but doesn't outwardly say anything. All of the riders decide to split up to defeat the last count 'em, 4 creature monsters, with Buster telling Kento to partner up with Espada since he's been super emo recently. Before Kento leaves, Toma asks if he's okay, with Kento saying yes, but him also saying that he knows what his responsibility is, while also saying under his breath, "Where we made our promise." Cut to Legiel on a rooftop somewhere, watching all the riders as they run to the areas taken. As Toma prepares to enter the book world though, he's stopped by both Storius and Zuos. Toma prepares to fight, only going base for some reason. Whatever, cut over to Kenzan, who prepares to enter the book world himself, who notices that Kento isn't there with him. How the fuck did it take you this long to notice that Kento wasn't there with you though? Cut to Kento back at the Sword of Logo space still, apologizing to an unconscious Rintaro. He apologizes for the way he's been acting. He just thought that it was his responsibility to defeat Caliber still, even after their promise. He wanted to make amends for 15 years ago, not just for his dad betraying the guild, but to also get his friend back, the girl that we used to play with, whose name finally gets revealed, Luna. Kento then asks the unconscious Rintaro to look after Toma while he's gone. After Kento leaves though, Rintaro awakens. Cut to Caliber, standing around somewhere alone, and then Kento shows up. Caliber asks how Kento knew that he'd be here, with Kento saying that he was there 15 years ago. Wait. If that's all the criteria it was for this to be figured out, why the fuck don't Buster and Slash know this? They literally play a clip of the girl getting taken from 15 years ago. Buster and Slash are right over there. Why the fuck don't they know what's going on? Kento then explains Caliber's plan. 6 books with pillars of light glowing out of them, and a big book in the center. That's what Caliber's apparently after. Caliber then smirks and says, "Ah, so you figured out my plan." When not only did he not, but also, the fucking promised place is in the real world? So then super what the hell did Rintaro mean when he said that no human could lift a Seiken? Over half the Sword of Logos is fucking human! Anyway, they both prepare to henshin to fight, and I just can't help but laugh. It is literally the next day since they last fight. What does he expect to happen other than... Which is exactly what happens. Anyway, cut to the other riders fighting their creature monsters, and then cut back to the Sword of Logo space where Mei walks in to give Rintaro something, only for it to reveal that he's gone. Cut back to Toma, who's now fighting Lugiel and Zuos in Volume 3 now, but it's just too much for him, so he gets to Henshin, and he almost dies. Until an injured Blade shows up to help Toma in the nick of time. Blades tells Toma to go find Kento, but when Toma tells Rintaro that he's crazy for fighting in his conditioned period, Rintaro actually yells at Toma that it must be him. Rintaro then tells Toma everything that Kento told him about Luna, and from there, Toma remembers everything. I think. Toma thanks Rintaro and prepares to head off to find Kento at Rintaro's request. And then Zuos and Legiel just decide to leave for some reason. It's fucking okay. Cut to the other riders using finishers on their respective creatures and actually destroying them, including Blades and Kenzan. But when all of the riders destroy their creatures, their swords glow, including Blades, except Kenzan. Also, when the riders destroy their respective creatures, pillars grow for them, also except for Kenzan for some fucking reason. Kenzan destroyed 2 creature monsters, so why aren't there 2 green pillars? Did Zuos and Legiel show up to stop Toma from destroying the red pillar? I don't fucking know. Cut to mixing shots of Espada fighting Caliber, with Toma trying to get to Kento. Espada tries using a finisher on Caliber, but it simply gets redirected back at him, causing him to Henshin brutally. But he tries to get back up, vowing that, even at the cost of his life, and for his friends, he will defeat Caliber. For his dad, for Rintaro, and for Toma. In response, Caliber has this to say.
神山トーマか。あの時助けた少年が火炎剣烈火を手にするとは。だが私の前に立ちはだかるなら迷わず切る。
Huh. We will come back to this. Espada Henshins again, with both of them using a finisher on each other, with both of them putting their backstood into it, as it were, and cut to night, where Toma's apparently upset that Kento died. Nah, I'm just kidding, he's still alive. For some fucking reason. It's just the show trying to triple dip on another fucking fake out death. So despite scenes like this happening, not dead. And guys, they're gonna fucking do another one. They're gonna quadruple dip next episode. God. Toma tells Kento that he's sorry for taking so long to remember, and that he's also sorry for not being able to keep his promise to either him or Luna. The episode ends, however, with Tassel and the man from Avalon looking on at a Toma crying on for the now unconscious Kento, leading directly into episode 13, I Will Stay True to My Convictions, which begins... Another intro recap by Tassel, who says that there is trouble this time. The episode itself opens up in the weird nurse's room that they had Rintaro in last episode, or a room that looks awfully similar to it, with Toma, Rintaro, and Mei watching over the now unconscious Kento. And like I said last episode about Rintaro, lots of people thought Kento died, and could you fucking blame them? Toma opens up his pop-up book and gets a flashback of sorts of him, Kento, and Luna playing in the sort of Logos base. Is this supposed to be taken literally, though? Like, is this actually happening? Plus, this just raises the issue further. Who the fuck is Toma? Toma says that the 3 of them used to play together, but that he forgot something important. Rintaro then tells Toma that Kento thought that Toma was dead, but then when he found out that he was alive, he got super excited. And then Toma says that that's just like Kento, to bear everything on his shoulders like that. You know, what with all of the scenes that Kento totally didn't do that before. Anyway, cut to the Time Tracker ripoffs who were just rock hard excited about their plan succeeding. But then Storius questions if the Swordsman of Thunder will appear, making me scratch my head. Why does it even matter? Caliber even says a line that implies that it actually doesn't matter if he appears at all. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base, however, where the writers are not only worried about the situation with the city, but they're also concerned about Kento. Apparently, he's falling into darkness. Whatever the fuck that means. Toma asks if there's a way to save him, but Buster simply says that you'll have to ask Caliber on how his sword works, which makes no fucking sense. Again, Buster and Slash worked side by side with the previous Caliber. How the fuck do they not know that sword works? Why isn't Rintaro falling to darkness? Caliber used to finish her on him too, so what the hell? Just to be clear, this is absolutely just the show double dipping on Espad's death. Just to be clear, this is them doing another fake out death on a character 2 times in 2 episodes in a row. Fuck off, Saber. Slash then says that the Pillars of Light are powered by book energy, and then Toma says that it's just like 15 years ago, surprising everyone. He then says that the villains are trying to connect the worlds so that way they can obtain great power, and Buster then says that the book in the center, once all the pillars are lit up, is the key to everything. Although, side note, there is no pillar in the center yet, so minor continuity error. Anyway, and then Kenzan says that he'll avenge Espada, making Buster a little angry. They all say that since one pillar isn't lit yet, they deduce then that the only 2 swords that are able to light up the last pillar are either the Sword of Lightning or the Sword of Darkness. They then suggest to take his sword, that way they can save Kento and the city. Toma and Rinto are the first to head out, but then Mei gets an alert on her book thing about Caliber showing up at the last location to defeat the new last creature. The rest of the writers head out as well, but when Mei plans to head out too, Buster actually stops her, telling her to look after Kento. Slash decides to stay behind, saying that he has something important to do. He then shoves 2 blank books, one of which being the one that Toma got from Avalon, into a little tube thingy. Then cut over to Toma and Rintaro henching to fight Caliber, then cut over to what the actual events of the show were, and not what the Espada special wants you to think happened. That will be made more relevant later. Kento awakens and notices Toma's pop-up book and opens it before getting a flashback of sorts to Luna, and then leaving before Mei walks in. Somehow. Cut over to Toma and Rinto getting their asses kicked to Caliber, who prepares a finisher on them, who that gets blocked by Kenzan and Buster arriving in Volume 2. Buster then asks Caliber on how to save Kento, but Buster simply tells them to forget it, that the existence of one whose soul is trapped by darkness cannot be saved. This then makes all of the writers pissed, and they then swear to save Kento no matter what, and all do a finisher on Caliber that gets, in 2 swift strokes of his sword, overpowered and countered with a finisher of his own, defeating all 4 of them instantly. Wow. Caliber then prepares another finisher on the injured Rintaro, but then Toma jumps up to try to challenge it, only to get countered again and dealt with. So that means Toma should be falling to darkness now too, right? The last creature monster then tries to attack an injured Rinto, and as Caliber charges up a finisher against it, Espada comes right the fuck out of nowhere to try and defeat the creature monster, only to take the remnants of Caliber's attack and explode. What the fuck did he think was gonna happen? Why the hell is he here? What the hell did he... Why? Why are you here? What did you think was gonna happen, other than... As the 6th and final pillar is formed, all of the writers get thrown out of the book world, and then Blades to Henshins to talk with Espada for some reason. He demands to know why Kento did what he did, but Kento doesn't really give an answer other than we're family, which, again, doesn't answer the question. But then Rintaro says that he will save Kento, not just because it's his mission, but because he's human? Then what the fuck did he mean back in episode 1 then? And then Mei shows up to try and actually save Kento, with Rintaro telling her to actually do her job this time, while everybody goes to fight Caliber again. As all the writers fight Caliber, Kento thanks all of the writers for everything they've done for him. Buster may be clumsy with his sword and his words, but he's incredibly nice. Rintaro may be a little sturdious, but he's pretty nice, and he's a really good friend. Kenzan may be rough around the edges and always looking for a fight, but he's incredibly nice. And Toma, he's his best friend, his childhood best friend. He's always so nice, and Slash, aw man, he fixes the swords. He's just so nice. This is pathetic. This is nothing. This is such tertiary garbage. I can't care. How could anyone possibly care? There's literally been nothing happening in 13 episodes. And now, the show is just trying to double dip on Kento's death. All for what? Because the show feels self-aware of the fact that Kento's the best character in the show? All because he's got such a tragic backstory. His dad was Caliber, and now he's not Caliber. He's dead, and now he feels like it's his responsibility to fight Caliber alone. Fuck off, he's an idiot. Jesus Christ, if he really wants to save the day, he'd realize that his friends can actually help him. Kento's just a goddamn idiot. Caliber then uses a finisher on all 4 of the riders, causing all of them to get blown away, but Rintaro, Buster, and Kenzan also get dehenshin. Toma, being the last one left alive, uses a finisher on Caliber but misses and gets easily countered by him, causing him to get dehenshin too. As Mei now cries out for an injured Toma, Toma then in turn gets a flashback of Luna from 15 years ago, and then stands, saying that he will save the city and Kento like a fucking baby. Causing Brave Dragon and Rekka to glow for some reason. Cut over to the Sword of Logos base where the book that Toma got from Avalon starts to glow for some reason and flies over to him. Daishinji even making a face as if to say it's about time, as if he knew what was going on. Luna speaks through the book that Toma got from Avalon, saying that she knows Toma has the power, surprising Kento as well. Apparently he heard her. Toma then reaches out and grabs the book, it changing to a new book, Dragonic Knight. He then puts it in and changes to his new form. Caliber tries to send his few sword slashes at Toma, but he simply breathes them away and launches one back of his own at Caliber. Toma then says that the reason he's even here is because of the friends he made along the way, unlike Caliber, who cast them all aside. Caliber tries to swipe Toma a few more times, but to seemingly little effect, and after Toma simply punches away a few more rider finishers out from Caliber, he prepares a finisher of his own. That does pretty good damage to Caliber overall. As the two fight, however, the man from Avalon appears behind a tree behind Toma and says something incredibly stupid. I'm sorry, what trials did Toma go on? Because as far as I can tell, he went on none. He didn't even earn this power in any special way. The man in Avalon literally just gave it to him because he fucking asked for it. You know, as opposed to the other ways Toma gets his powers, which are the other characters just having them on them for some reason, and then he beats them off of them. So magnificent. Again, what trial did Toma go on? Because if it's about believing in his friends, he's already done that since before episode 8, so what the hell? Plus, why the hell is Dragonic Knight as strong as it is? Caliber's book, Jiao Dragon, is as strong as it is because it absorbed over 20 books of power. He absorbed the power of 3 Volume 3 writers, 2 of them were absorbed twice, then he absorbed the power of 2 Volume 2 writers into it, and then he absorbed the power of 2 stolen books, then he absorbed the power of 3 altar books, plus pouring some of his own Jaku Dragon into it. Toma's power? How strong is it? Well, we never actually learn. Oh, to spoil ahead a bit, another character who gets a power similar to Toma's only uses 4 books. There are 3 main books plus King of Arthur. So meaning Toma's book should be just as strong as that. 4 books of power. So why is it stronger than Jiao Dragon? Because good fucking writing is hard. Fuck off. After taking a beatdown from Toma, Caliber decides to fly up. Wait. How the fuck long has he had this power? What the hell? Is this a Jiao Dragon power or a Jaku Dragon power? Well, regardless, Toma flies after him on his pet dragon and they take the fight into the air. Caliber then says, all the while acting as though the fight totally isn't a concern to him, Toma simply ignores it though, leading to the two doing a finisher that Toma of course obviously wins. Caliber then explodes. I repeat, Caliber then explodes, his sword falls to the ground, and then Toma shoots a flame wall at the book thing in the center of all of the book pillars to seal it away from the bad guys. Apparently he could do that, or knew that he could do that. Anyway, Toma then tries to look for Caliber's sword, but he just doesn't find it. There really isn't an excuse for why he doesn't, he just doesn't. So Kento's gonna die now. It's just a shame I can't possibly care about him though. I know nothing about him other than he's Espada, and his dad was Caliber. And this can extend to the entire cast. I know nothing about anyone. So why should I care about anyone dying? Plus, the scene itself is just a fucking shallow ripoff of a much better scene in build.
僕だって戦争の道具を作るつもりなんてなかった。でも、あなたの思惑に気づいた時にはもう遅かった。だから自分に言い聞かせたんです。 ライダーシステムはエブルトを倒すために必要なんだって。そのために多少の犠牲はやむを得ないんだって。ケント、ケント、
Also, he's not fucking dead, but whatever. The last thing we see in the episode, however, is Calibur's sword, alone, somewhere, with dark energy billowing out of it, and also I think Kento's soul trapped inside. Ending the episode. Taking another break from the show, we're actually going to talk about the Espada special! Oh boy! After the intro by Tassel, we open up with a flashback of sorts to 15 years ago with Kento, Toma, and Luna playing and reading, and then flash forward to Kento meeting with his dad or something, then flash forward to the event where Luna gets taken 15 years ago, and then flash forward to the present where Kento awakens from a nightmare he was having. Of all of those events. He then looks down at his arm and wonders what the hell he's been doing with his life. Apparently he's still falling into darkness. The special takes place during episode 13, and actually tries to tell us a little bit more of what Kento is doing, and also tries to explain why Kento even tried to show up during episode 13. Tries to. Kento then gets a flashback to some time before the events of the show, to when he was given Raimekeni Kazuchi and became a Espada. What did he do to earn this sword, though? Why is he becoming a Espada specifically? Why is Sophia the one giving him the sword? I don't fucking know. Show doesn't explain. Buster then congratulates Kento on becoming a rider, with Kento asking if he can finally help Buster track down his dad, but Buster simply tells him to forget it and worry about his own duties. Kento then asks Buster, since the two are good friends, if Buster knows why his father betrayed the guild, but Buster, obviously, says he doesn't know. Although one has to wonder why Kento didn't ask these questions sooner. Or why it seems like he only thought of to ask this question now. But whatever. Buster simply says that he thought it was weird that Fukamiya attacked Kamijo, and also saying that it was weird that Fukamiya disappeared. Although, again, one has to wonder why they don't know Kamijo didn't disappear or did disappear. They never question it regardless. Anyway, flashback to the present, where Kento remembers the argument that he and Rintaro were having a few episodes ago. Although one can't help but notice that Kento seems to have mysteriously forgotten about those times where he was a dick to his friends. Don't worry, show. I haven't. As Kento tries to get up out of bed, Toma's pop-up book falls up out of it and... Wait a minute. I thought this special takes place during episode 13. Isn't it? I'm dropping the pretenses. The show is actually retconning what happened in episode 13 to say that what happens here is what happened in episode 13. But as I've explained already, not only is this not how it went, this will also never get referenced in the show proper. Nothing in these specials will ever get referenced, except the Kenzan special, weirdly enough, but more on that in part 2, will ever get referenced in the show proper. All this special now ends up being is just not only a retcon of what happened in the show proper, but build up for the Rintaro special that will also never get referenced in the show. I can't wait for that to get referenced in the shitty sequel movie, though. For all the fucking wealth that's worth. After Kento opens his pop-up book, he has a flashback to what he was doing during the events of episode 2. Sitting in the base, doing nothing. Rintaro says that Toma already had Brave Dragon and Rekka on him already, but when Sophia asks why, Rintaro answers a completely different question.
彼はどこでそれを彼の著書ロストメモリーには15年前に起きた異変と酷似した内容が記
Which not only doesn't answer the question, Rintaro, it also doesn't mean anything. Who cares if Toma's book has memories of the event 15 years ago in it? Did you have to track down the dude who made the Three Little Pigs book and ask him shit? Because the Three Little Pigs book is not just a ride book, you know. Anyway, then Rintaro leaves, implying this to be when he shows up in episode 2, and then a little bit later Kento leaves, implying this to be when he shows up at the end of episode 2, which makes no sense. Toma and Rintaro have at least showed up twice back to base, so why don't they see him? Cut back to the present, where Mei walks in to have a conversation with Kento. You know, to really let you know that this is completely different and not what happened in the show. Then cut to the other writers fighting Caliber in a scene that serves no other purpose other than to say that this special is what happened in the show, when no it's not. Cut back to Kento and Mei talking. Mei shuffles through her purse and brings out a camera that Rintaro apparently won back in episode 5 while she and him were looking for bubbles. Apparently Rintaro wants to take pictures of everybody in the Sword of Logos base. This will be something that'll be elaborated more on in the Blade special, so we'll talk about it more then there. Kento then says how he wishes he was strong just like Rintaro. Although Mei doesn't get it, and misinterprets it to think that he has strong luck. This apparently cheers up Kento, but his throat is dry, so he asks Mei to get him some water. Before Mei can come back, Kento is gone. Although he didn't leave nothing behind, he left a photo on Rintaro's camera so that way they could all remember something of him. The last thing we see in this special, however, is Kento still falling to darkness, marching onward to go do what he did in the last episode. Which, need I remind you, was... What the hell does he think he's gonna do? Why does he do this? What does he think this is going to achieve? Why does he think he's going to help them when he literally knows he shouldn't? What does he think is gonna happen other than... And wow, that's 3 for 3 specials so far that are fucking terrible. What did I learn about Espada? Well, I learned that he got Ikazuchi before the events of the show, something I'd already know by watching the show, and I know that his dad is Caliber, something else I know by watching the fucking show, and that's why I'm calling him Espada from now on. Anyway, episode 14, These Feelings That Dwell in My Blade, begins with... Another narration recap with Tessel crying over Espada's supposed death. The episode itself begins with the Time Checker ripoff discussing the flame pillar that Saber put up. Legiel says that it'll go away eventually, but Storius remarks that Caliber got defeated rather easily by Saber, much to Zuos' dismay. Although Storius does say that it doesn't matter overall. Cut to Caliber's sword, alone somewhere with dark energy billowing out of it, and Dazast walking up on it. With presumably the idea of taking it before it glows, with Caliber's body reforming from nothing. Because as if you will remember, he exploded. Caliber then says he will not allow any more interferences. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base, where everybody is also sad about Espada's supposed death. Mei tries to put all the blame on herself, but nobody wants to bear it alone. With Rintaro saying how much of an amazing swordsman Kento was, with him also saying how they all need to uphold his amazing expectations. Kenzan then says how he'll avenge Espada, with Buster agreeing this time, with him also saying that there's something else they need to do. Save the city, as Toma says, with now everyone standing in newfound resolve. Ugh. Toma then walks over to Buster and gives him back the Needle Hedgehog book. Toma then walks over to Kenzan and gives him the Triceratops book, while he keeps both Lambno Alagina and Ikazuchi for himself. Nothing for Rintaro now, for now. After the OP, we're cut over to the Time Checker ripoffs who start to head off to the fight, but only Legiel, for some reason. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base, where Rintaro asks Daishinji if the book that is stewing in the tube thingy, that he also just knows about for some reason, is ready. When Daishinji of course says no, Rintaro then asks if it can be made for him, with Daishinji not saying anything at first, but then acquiescing to Rintaro's demands, saying that he'll make the proper adjustments, first asking for Rintaro's books, shoving all 3 of them plus King of Art into his little analyzer thingy, as if that's something he can just do. Whatever. Mei then gets in alone on her book thingy, so Kenzan, Saber, and Buster head off to go fight. The riders show up and prepare to fight Legiel, but then Caliber shows up. To no one's surprise. The writers don't even fucking question it. But it cuts over to the bad guys who apparently are also not surprised. In fact, they apparently accounted for it. Buster henshins to fight Caliber but gets stopped by Legiel. Toma in the meantime also henshins to fight Caliber, for some reason not going in Dragonic Knight but instead a new form. He wants to fight using Kento's power, so he uses Lambno Alagina plus Brave whatever to become Brave Alagina. Why the fuck is he not using Dragonic Knight? If he wants to fight using Kento's power, spoilers, he can still do that either just by using his books or by dual wielding in Dragonic Knight. This is stupid. Power scaling matters. Last episode, Jiao Dragon fought against all 4 riders in much stronger forms. Now he's fighting less riders, less swords, and some of these riders are in weaker forms. Kenzan isn't even in Volume 2. What the hell? Power scaling matters, people. Especially in a show where people beat people up like this. Saber and Kenzan tear into Caliber, with both of them using a finisher named after Espada's finisher. But the attack itself is one that Espada's never used before. Okay. Cut over to Buster though, who's having a rather intense fight with Legiel, only for Kenzan to show up. What? I thought he was helping Toma. Okay. Cut over to Toma, who's fighting Caliber, only for Buster to show up. Why are these characters teleporting? Please make it stop. Buster uses a finisher using one of Espada's books, and then after that goes in the offensive on Caliber, but gets easily dealt with. After Buster fails to do any significant damage on Caliber, Kenzan tries to use a finisher using one of the yellow books he got from Espada on Caliber, only for it to get blocked as well. Toma then slowly walks up on Caliber, stroking Kento's cock by saying how much of an amazing person he was and how cool it was that he took all the burdens all on himself. Toma raises Akazuchi and Rekka and prepares to do a finisher on Caliber, one that he just can't block for some reason. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base where Slash prepares to leave, and then cut back to the other riders who prepare to dogpile on Caliber until the other bad guys show up. Toma simply jumps over them and tries to fight Caliber solo until he gets slashed away. And then Slash shows up to help. As Slash and Caliber fight, Slash calls Caliber his friend. And I just can't help but laugh. No, you're not. There was never a time when you ever questioned Kamijo being alive.
まさか上条さんに剣を向けるとは。あれ以来、姿を消したきり音沙汰もない。
Only Fukamiya. No, you're not, friends. Go fuck yourself, Saber. Slash gets slashed away by Caliber, and then Toma fights Caliber solo, with Slash, Kenzan, and Buster now fighting the Timejacker rip-offs. It's a rather intense fight for the three, but then they step it up a notch by going Volume 2, with all of them switching books from each other. Cut to the Great Book and the Flame Pillar, where the Flame Pillar disappears and the Great Book is not visible, as is the Wonder Emerald for some reason. As is Gold Dust for some reason. It too is visible as the Wonder Emerald is shown. And then Disaster appears as well, saying how a great festival or something is about to happen. Okay. Cut back to the Sword of Logos base where Rintaro and Mei are waiting for the book to get done, and then it gets done. Cut to Toma fighting Caliber still, where he's managing to fend off Caliber's attacks, for some fucking reason, somehow, until Caliber swipes Toma away one time too strong, I guess, and he gets knocked out of Brave Elegina, and the Lapna Elegina ride book falls on the ground. Toma then tries to get up and attack Caliber again, but the attack gets blocked by Storius? The fuck? And then Zuos and Legiel come right the fuck out of nowhere. I thought they were fighting the other riders. But then they show up, and then everybody starts brawling, and the Timejacker rip-offs tell Caliber to get the hell out of here. Can people, again, stop teleporting? Then Rintaro shows up, picks up the Lamp Noelegina ride book, and swears to end this, as he uses his new power, King Lion Dai Senki. It's just a shame that for as cool as this form and Dragonic Knight are, they didn't do anything to earn them. Rintaro just sat in a fucking room all day, and Toma... I don't even know what the fuck he did. Again, these forms look and sound really cool. They did nothing to earn them. It's pathetic. Anyway, then Buster and Kenzan give up the yellow books that Toma gave them to give to Rintaro so he can use them in a finisher on all the bad guys, which surprisingly blows them all away. Afterwards, Rintaro rushes towards the Timejacker rip-offs to fight them personally, while giving King of Arthur back to Toma. Toma in turn tells Rintaro to destroy the pillars. As if that's something they could have fucking done the whole time. Even if it was just Toma that could have done it, why didn't the other riders just distract Caliber and the Timejacker rip-offs while Toma went around destroying the pillars? Whatever. Rintaro then shows off the true power of King Lion Dai Senki, which is to turn into a lion. And then he literally mauls all the Timejacker rip-offs. Afterwards, Rintaro shoots a finisher at one of the pillars, seemingly destroying it. Toma then goes Crimson Dragon and flies up to the Great Book in the sky, ending the episode. Leading into our 15th and final episode for this review, What Lies Beyond Our Resolve, which begins...
皆さん、僕は世界を救おうと頑張るトーマたちから目が離せません。
A basic introduction recap by Tassel, which seamlessly transitions into the show, with Toma asking Caliber what his plan is as well as where the hell they are. Cut to the riders who are worried about Toma, and then the villains show up, looking none too worse for wear, despite the fact that literally 5 seconds ago Rintaro mauled them to death. Storius explains that only the person who obtains eternal truth can make it back. He further explains that the book in the sky is connected to an eternal and infinite realm where all knowledge and infinite power is stored. Then the Time Jacker ripoffs shoot monster slashes at the riders, causing the most of them to dehension except for Rintaro. They have to shoot him twice, which is just fucking funny. This attack should have done nothing. This is what Zhao Dragon did to Dragonic Knight. The Time Jacker ripoffs then turn human to, I think, mock the riders. Cut over to Toma and Caliber, where Caliber gives him the 411. They're going to a place where all knowledge is formed. They're going to the only piece of the Great Book that still remains intact from 2,000 years ago, the Great Book's Table of Contents. I'm not kidding. Although one has to ask, what the fuck does it mean to be the only piece of the book remaining after 2,000 years? 1. All Wonderite books come from the Great Book and have all been still intact for 2,000 years. 2. If you mean that it looks like a normal book still. Cut back to Storius, who says that all of human history contains but a mere fraction compared to the book's power. Although one has to wonder how big of a fraction, because if it's like 7/8, that's a pretty big fucking fraction. Whatever. The writers then ask the villains what they do with such power, but after they say they'd simply recreate the world, they then start beating up the writers, and they could do simply nothing about it. The writers then try to henshin, but Storius simply says that if they destroy the pillars, Toma can't come back. Which doesn't make any sense, as that's completely irrelevant to killing you. Like, they could just fight you, and then leave the pillars not destroyed for a little while, until Toma gets back. But whatever, everyone in the show is retarded. Cut back to Caliber, who says that once he obtains infinite truth, he will become a god! And Toma doesn't like that, so he goes Volume 3 using King of Arthur and... Wait a minute. How come he didn't use this a couple episodes ago? Whatever. He uses Volume 3 using King of Arthur, and Ryder slashes Caliber out of the air. After Toma and Caliber leave wherever and whatever the hell they were in, they take the battle to the ground, where Toma is in base now for some reason. He's fighting a losing battle, and then Caliber asks him a tough question. What would he do if he found out the world had a set ending? What would he do if everything he knew wouldn't matter? Caliber then uses his darkness power and sends Toma to the dark dimension. So he's dead, right? Cut back to the riders getting their asses kicked, where Mei has had enough. She gives a speech in an effort to raise the riders' morale. All the while, the villains aren't fucking shooting her. Shoot her. Shoot her. Shoot her. Shoot her. The villains are right over there. Shoot her. Shoot her. She's standing right there with no protection. Stab her. Shoot her. Blow her up. Fucking kill her. Why are you allowing this? The riders all then stand in newfound resolve and henshin into battle into their base forms for some reason. Anyway, cut over to Toma in the realm of darkness, depressed. The fuck? Is this real? Is this happening? What the hell even is happening? Where is Kento? Is he here too? Are they both dead? Well, speaking of Kento, he shows up and tells Toma to stop moping. Toma then grabs onto the light that Kento makes, in turn grabbing onto Ikazuchi, breaking out of the realm of darkness, much to Caliber's surprise. How the fuck did he get out of there? How the fuck did he fall to darkness so quickly? I guess it doesn't matter since he got out so quickly, but that's still not a good thing. Fuck you, show. Why didn't Kento come with? Could he come with? Was that something that could have been done? How did Toma get out without a sword? Was Kento really there? Cut back to the other riders though, fighting the Time Jacker ripoffs, where they're doing better in base for some reason than in their upgraded forms. Whatever. Rintaro decides to kick it up a notch by going King Lion Daisenki again, and then go on a rampage even further by destroying some of the pillars. Cut back to Caliber, who decides to reward Toma for his bravery or something, I don't really know, and decides to tell him what happened 15 years ago. Kamijo explains that 15 years ago, it was not just a battle to save the world. It was a battle to save his best friend, Fukamiya Hayato. 15 years ago, During the chaos, when Kamijo met Fukamiya, he met him with him looking at a girl floating in the air in a yellow light for some reason. Fukamiya explains that the girl is a unique girl, one whose very existence can connect both the Wonder Egg world and the real world, and Fukamiya explains that once he obtains the power through her, he will gain eternal truth. Fukamiya then henshins to battle Kamijo. He says that once he gains eternal truth, he will find true peace to the world. He says that someone told him this, and he can't be saying anything any more conveniently for the plot, can he? A kid Toma then runs up to Luna and tries to help. She awakens, but then is immediately taken. Kamijo is distracted by this, but then gets immediately cut down by Fukamiya, dehenshining him. Kamijo then gets up and cuts down Fukamiya, causing him to dehenshin, and then runs over to Toma, where he then resays his line, redone in a horrible way. And then Kamijo stabs the ground, causing a huge fucking explosion that Toma of course survives again for some fucking reason. Cut back to the present, where Kamijo says that the reason why Fukamiya betrayed the guild was because someone told him this information. Someone within the sort of logo space. And it was from that day forth that even if it meant working with the Megid, Kamijo would find out why his best friend betrayed the guild and who the real traitor of the guild was. This backstory is retarded and it makes both Calibers look like retards, as well as it making no sense overall in the larger story. 1. As Kamijo is walking up on Fukamiya, Buster and Slash should be able to be seen in the background, as should a bunch of mooks and Disaster, but they're not. 2. Why does this place look nothing like how it does before in either Slash, Buster, Toma, or even Kento's flashbacks? It looks completely different. Three. This perspective is fucked. After Kamijo gets dehenshined by Fukamiya, it's facing Toma and Luna. But then after the girl gets taken, he gets up and cuts down Fukamiya and then runs over to Toma to stab his sword in the ground and then make the big explosion. But now Fukamiya is in front of him for some reason, as well as henshined. What? Then the next shot shows Fukamiya as if he were behind Kamijo and dehenshined again. The fuck? 4. How is Toma alive? And no, this little stunt doesn't count. Again, that happens after the explosion. 5. Kamijo is just allowed to take Kurayami and become the new Caliber? How would that be the case? Why would that be the case? Why would this sword allow its new wielder to be the person who killed its last one? How does that work? 6. What about the time checker ripoffs? Wouldn't they think that it's really weird that there's a different person behind the mask now? I mean, they never questioned it in the show, so I guess they just don't care, but that's still really weird. 7. Was Fukamiya's body never found? There's at least 2 instances in the show overall where they can confirm Rintaro's master's body.
多くの剣士が倒れた。
水の剣士。
So what about Fukamiya? Did they never confirm him? 8. Kamijo never told anyone about anything of what happened here because he thought that they wouldn't believe him? Fuck off, show. The characters in narrative call out Kamijo as if he were wrong, and he's easily convinced by Toma that he is wrong. Fuck off. 9. Why are the Pillars of Light different? I know characters in narrative will say that they're the same, but no, they're not. They look completely different. 10. If Kamijo was willing to kill people to prove his friend's not really kinda sorta innocence, why didn't he kill people sooner? Like when he had the multiple chances to with the riders, why didn't he take their swords and books sooner? 11. What did going to Avalon have to do with anything? He doesn't even need any power specific from here. He just wants the truth. And 12. What the fuck does eternal truth mean? All truths are eternal, you idiot. Plus, this backstory will be made all the more retarded, all the more later down the line. But you're gonna have to trust me on that one. Caliber henshins into Zhao Dragon, and Saber in turn henshins into Base for some fucking reason. Not like it matters, as it gets dealt with rather quickly, but he then kicks it up to King of Arthur, only for that to fail rather quickly too. But then he goes Volume 3, but then it cuts to the other writers fighting the Time Jacker ripoffs. Buster, Kenzan, and Slash give their Volume 2 books to Blade so that he can shoot down a pillar. Cut back to Caliber and Saber though, where Saber says that if Caliber trusted his friends more, the future would have been different. Caliber laughs at the idea by saying that things aren't that simple, which is just pathetic and dumb, as that's literally how the flow of time works. Also, yes, it would've. The show literally calls out Kamijo for this bullshit, but whatever. Saber then uses a Volume 3 finisher on Caliber, which somehow overpowers him. Cut back to Blade using all of his blue books to destroy another pillar, but then cut back to Toma, who finally fucking decides to use Dragonic Knight for some reason. The two writers then take the battle to the air, as if this were a movie final battle or something. The fight itself looks pretty cool, I just wish the fucking build-up to it was better. The show sucks. The two then challenge each other with a rider kick, with Saber of course winning, but to add on extra damage, Saber uses a double rider slash using Rekka and Ikazuchi to truly win the fight. Why didn't Toma use two swords last episode to fight Caliber? Why didn't he end this arc one entire episode early? Fuck it, good writing is hard. Plus, why didn't Caliber explode and die this time? His sword just falls to the ground. Why? I don't fucking know. Caliber then recognizes Toma's resolve, and then begins to wonder if he was wrong. Fuck off, show. If it was this easy for him to be convinced that he was wrong, then why didn't he just talk to his friends sooner? But this will be a point made more relevant in part 3, so we'll get more into that then there. Caliber then tells Toma to find the real truth in his stead. Find the real culprit who betrayed the guild. Doing so may lead him to finding Luna, but he warns him though that taking this path may cause his friends to hate him. And then Disaster comes up and stabs him out of nowhere. Okay. Toma tries to fight him off, but he's too weak after the battle he had with Kamijo. Disaster in turn was apparently looking, like I said earlier, for the book that Kamijo had on him, and after he takes it, he just leaves. Toma then runs over to Kamijo, whose last words are that he entrusts Kurayami to Toma. I mean, technically that isn't really his sword either, it's Fukamiya's, but whatever. And then a weird duster fog thing appears out of nowhere and takes Kurayami and his books. But then the weird area that they're in starts to crumble away, so Toma's gotta get the hell out of there quickly. Cut to the other writers destroying the last pillar. The villains decide to leave since apparently their plans have been ruined. Oh, fuck it, okay. They could continue fighting, but I guess not. Episode needs to end, I guess. Toma then comes back, and then everybody basks in a battle hard fought. And girl number 3 can apparently be seen away as yonder, who simply smiles. Cut to Tassel, who asks the man in Avalon if the day has been saved, only for him to say no. Ending the episode, but not the arc. We still have the Blade special to talk about. As if it's anything to talk about. The last thing we see in the arc is the Blade special, and after the intro recap by Tassel, we open up with the last thing we see in episode 15. All of the writers basking in a battle's hard fought, thankful that they all got to keep their promises to Kento. Cut to the next day, where Rinto is apparently moping about a dead Kento. But then Mei shows up with some pastries and raffle tickets to try and cheer him up, with Rintaro being somewhat annoyed with her and actually telling her to go away.
You know absolutely nothing about us, do you?
Okay, to be fair, I just met you.
Mei then despairs at the fact that she basically knows nothing about Rintaro, but just then has a flashback to episode 5 when he and her were looking for bubbles and Rintaro won a raffle. Yeah, remember that dumb cutaway? Apparently it was really important. Also, it looks completely different from the way we see it in the show, but I'm sure that has nothing to do with the show proper. As I talked about in the Espada special, Rintaro from this raffle apparently won a camera. As we later find out in this flashback, Rintaro apparently wanted to use this camera to take photos of everybody in the sort of logo space. Apparently, from what he says, photos are an interesting way to keep memories of everybody that he cares about. He wanted to take photos of everybody in the sort of logo space. Mei then points out that despite Rintaro being a fountain of knowledge, he doesn't have much practical skill in the real world. As Rintaro explains, or rather as he confirms, he was an orphan. The Sword of Logos raised him ever since he was a child, and with their vast knowledge and library of books, he basically just read only books. He also explains that the Water Swordsman was his father figure, and probable adopted father, since he says that he was the one who raised him. Mei then tries to cheer up Rintaro by saying that Kento thought of Rintaro as family, that's why he defended him. Rintaro says that he himself was weak, although Mei disputes this, saying how strong he was even when he was losing against Zuos. Then the special shows a flashback of the complete fight of Zuos versus Rintaro. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't see the point in showing this. It isn't really anything new. We already know the point of the fight. that despite Rintaro putting up a good fight, he lost. He wasn't strong enough. This isn't even anything new. The fight doesn't show or do anything new. It's only after the fight that this matters, because after the fight we see more stuff, with Mei trying to cheer up Rintaro, with it actually proving not necessary, as Rintaro himself was already morally strong. He says that he'll get stronger, and then leaves presumably back to the Sword of Logos base to tie in back to what happened at the end of episode 5 and the beginning of episode 6. Mei then says because of Rintaro's want to get stronger, he got strong enough to save Mei from Zuos later in volume 3, and then strong enough later on to block a hit from Caliber later. Although I'm not quite sure what that had to do with anything. But whatever. Mei then tells Rintaro that Kento thought that Rintaro was plenty strong, as well as showing him the photo that Kento left behind. Rintaro begins to cry, and the special then ends with Mei trying to tempt Rintaro with some sweets, and Rintaro saying that he vows to get stronger. Wow, again, what another waste of time. I already know that Rintaro lost to Zuos. I already know that his master was potentially the Blade's rider, whatever. What a disappointment. Everything in Saber so far has been an absolute shit show. Nothing in it has made any sense. Before I get into the character analysis portion as well as the greater show analysis, there are some points that I, have addressed throughout the review that I want to iron out right now. These main points being that Kamen Rider is just a kid show. Or better yet, there are no bad Kamen Rider.
Here's a phrase I like to say. There are no bad Kamen Rider seasons. And to be more general, all toku is good.
It's just a shame that people who say this dumbass shit don't actually believe it, though.
The moment you've all been waiting for. Marcos. So, I've been very adamant on my feelings on Saber in every single stream. This is awful. I don't like this. Why are they doing this? This is bad.
So now what is it? Is it all toku is good? Or is it all toku is good except for the ones I don't like? Because neither is true, as I've spent the last 4.5 hours explaining. Stop using these dumb, stupid, retarded-ass arguments that are double standards at face value. And about it being a kid show, you watch it too. Who cares if it's a kid show? And people praise these other kid shows like Gaim, Ryuki, Build. But you want to know what you won't find? People saying, who cares if they're good? They're kid shows. So stop saying that about the reverse. It's retarded. You wouldn't say it about a good kid show. And even if it's bad, saying that doesn't justify anything. Saying, it's a kid show, doesn't take away from the fact that Toma did nothing to get Dragonic Knight or any other stupid problem in this show. Plus, the next point. What I'm doing is neither wrong nor new. This is the same damn fandom that calls out people who like Ghost or think Decade is good. Fuck off. It's so hypocritical. Moving on. What has actually even happened in 15 episodes? Well, apparently 15 years ago, some place got attacked, and caught up in the incident was some young boy called Kamiyama Toma. What was he doing there? Where are his parents? Why is he there? I don't know. He's just caught up in this incident. And then he loses his memories after the incident. What happened in between 15 years ago and episode 1? Fuck it, who knows? Who cares? He's the main character, so just watch his story, despite the fact that you know nothing about him. Then he joins a rider guild, gains some powers, has some fun times, not really. And then he meets Caliber, who tries to beat him up and steal his powers. And then he actually loses his powers. And then he tries to get his powers back, meets some new riders, gets some new powers, beats up Caliber, and then it's revealed that Caliber was the previous Saber, and then Espada tries to fight Caliber 3 times, but then on the 3rd time he dies. But then everybody gets really mad, tries to fight Caliber, but then they all lose. But Toma, no, he's just like, nah, I really want to beat up Caliber for realsies. And then he gets a new power and beats up Caliber, and then Caliber just gets away. Or dies or something. It's not really made clear, and they don't really question it regardless. And then Toma doesn't use his new power again, and said he wants to use this other dumbass new form that he got, allowing Caliber to get away or something. But then the two take the fight into some alternate reality or something, where Toma finally decides to use his most powerful form against him and wins no problem, like he fucking should have done before, but didn't for no reason. And then everything around him starts crumbling away after Caliber dies from a sneak attack, and then the day is saved. What the fuck even was that? Did I have a stroke? That sounded like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But that's basically what happened in the show. We don't know anything about what happened between Toma 15 years ago and now. We know nothing about any of the characters, aside from tertiary bullshit and other shit that doesn't fucking get explained. But again, people will want me to appreciate this shit simply because some fuckers got a paycheck. Fuck off. Now on to the character analysis portion, starting with Toma, the main character. He was there for some event 15 years ago, but slightly before that, he was just alone. Reading. In some forest or something. Where are his parents? What is he doing here? Why did they allow him to be here? Does he have a family? These are questions I hope you are willing to fucking die with, because the show will never answer them. And then presumably, Luna walked up on him or something, and then he was caught up in the event. And then, flash forward to 15 years. What the hell happened in between then and now? Did he get adopted? Did he go to school? Why is his book so famous? He's a famous novelist because he wrote some book and everyone knows him because of that. And the Sword of Logos even wants him interned because his book has memories of the event 15 years ago. But much like I said earlier, did they have to track down the dude who made Peter Pan? Because that's more than just a ride book, you know? Like, I can't really say anything else about Toma. He doesn't really do anything. He doesn't earn his powers. And he's just a fucking Gary Stew. Moving on to Blades. He's an orphan, raised by the Sword of Logos to be the New Water swordsman after the previous one and his master/father figure was brutally murdered by the hands of the Megid. How was he an orphan though? How was he orphaned? Where was he orphaned? Why does he call other humans Homo sapiens when he's a Homo sapien too? I don't fucking know. Moving on to Kento, he's Toma's best friend, and he's also a member of the Sword of Logos ever since he was a child, much like Rintaro. And that's pretty much all there is to him. We know things about him, like he became Ikazuchi before the events of the show, and again, his father was Caliber, but that's pretty much it. We see in a flashback with Kenzan that he and him did train somewhere, but where that was never explained. But that's also another problem of the show. Places not properly being explained, like Kento's emo rooftop. Where that is never explained. And I'm not even talking about Kento anymore. Pretty much because there's nothing else to say. Moving on to Kenzan, and then Sophia. I'd say more about them, but honestly they don't do anything, or mean anything. Kenzan's just some angry kid who may or may not like Kento, and Sophia is taken out of the show. I say that as if that's a big deal, when honestly it really doesn't matter. She doesn't say anything of use when she is on screen, and the time she does say things have a bunch of questions behind them, like why is the Sword of Logos base in the North Pole? And why the hell didn't she explain anything to Toma about the big book?
連中は一体何をしようとしてるんです？
失われたワンダーライドブックの代わりを作り出し、世界を生み出した本を作ろうとしているのでしょ。
Nice job not explaining what the hell that is, dumbass. Moving on to Slash, his sword stopped working. It's better now. Moving on to Buster, he has a big sword. And a kid. Again, that's why I call them Buster and Slash. They don't have characters. They have things that are applicable to them. This will be made all the more relevant when we talk about the movie too. I'll get more into why Kamijo and Fukami are bad characters as we get through part 2 and 3. So, moving on to Tassel. Tassel is our narrator, who's definitely a character in this show, who simply hasn't done anything. I'll go over as to why this is dumb in part 3. Don't even get me started on you!
終わっていないんだ。